and welcome to the Actual Tech Media Megacast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's Megacast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the Megacast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's Megacast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the Megacast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the Megacast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's Megacast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the Megacast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling.
All right, well, I hope you are feeling ready and excited for this, because today is ransomware best practices for prevention, mitigation, and recovery. I am so happy to be here with all of you today as your moderator, because we are in the thick of summer holiday season. We all know it. It's hard to get meetings booked. It's tough to get projects over the finish line. People are distracted, and the bad actors know it too. They're looking for chaotic moments. So as we transition maybe from remote workforce to maybe bringing people back into the office, or maybe you're moving from that remote into hybrid, maybe it's holiday season, maybe there's a merger, threat actors are watching for these moments of chaos, and they're using that opportunity to get in the door. So what do we do? Because as we all know, it's a chaotic world. These things are going to happen, and there's nothing that we can do about them. So it starts with conversations like this. It starts with learning. It starts with preparing and planning. And that is exactly what we are here to do today, with the help of some top and leading industry experts from TierPoint, Zerto, an HPE company, Veeam, Rubrik, ID Agent, KnowBe4, Metallic, a Commvault Venture, Recovery Point, Pure Storage, and Rapid7. Wow, that is an all-star cast. Ransomware best practices is such an important topic, and we have so many amazing sessions lined up. So I hope you are all comfortable. I hope you're all awake. I hope you are ready to dive in. And I want to start by once again reintroducing myself. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech. And my fellow moderators, Scott Becker and Keith Ward, will be here with us on live chat. All right, I also want to talk about prizes, because I know you're all excited about that. What a great way to start the morning out, right? So today on the MegaCast, you could win one of 5 new 15-inch M2 MacBook Airs. Plus, we have a $300 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away every 30 minutes to lucky winners who are here live and present with us at the MegaCast. Now, as I mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked for you in the handouts tab. So if you have any questions about what those are, they are waiting for you there. All right, well, that was the last thing we needed to get through, and we are ready to get rolling today. So to kick us off, I am so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, and a familiar face here, especially when we're talking about ransomware, and that is, of course, the one and only Lindsay Kay, Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Human Security. So let's get Lindsay out here and get this conversation going. Okay, well, Lindsay, welcome back. It's been a little while since we've gotten to chat. I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited.
All right, well, we are talking about the always interesting topic, ransomware. And as usual, there's kind of that flow that we think about with mitigation, prevention, recovery. I guess it goes prevention, mitigation, recovery. So wait, which order would you put those in? Where do you want to start?
Recovery.
Yeah, okay, great. Oh, it's morning. I'm going to have more coffee. Lindsay, you kick us off. I'm going to hand things over to you. Start us out. What are we walking through today?
All right, thank you so much. So, hey everyone, my name is Lindsay Kay, and I'm the Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Human Security. So you're going to be hearing from several vendors on best practices around ransomware, specifically for prevention, mitigation, and recovery. And it's great to see us talking about these different stages of the ransomware attack lifecycle. But I really want to underscore the opportunities we have for minimizing the risk of a ransomware attack even happening. So one of our first opportunities to prevent the attack is to stop a threat actor from even getting into the network. So today, I'm going to focus on initial access, specifically how threat actors can gain access to the network through credentials, and what can be done to minimize our risks. So credentials can also be used to escalate an attack, specifically to gain access to other parts of the network or obtain higher privileges. So they're definitely relevant beyond just this first stage of the attack. So first, there are a couple key ways a threat actor can obtain credentials for initial or increased access to a network. A particularly well-known one is threat actors' ability to purchase credentials on the dark web for a variety of companies, products, or services. So generally, access will be priced based on how lucrative the access is. For example, a system administrator account with access to several of an organization's systems and services will be more expensive and powerful than lower level access. These credentials are often acquired via information stealer malware, which remains popular according to researchers. In 2023, the most popular are Redline, Raccoon, Titan, Aurora, and Vidar. So many of these have actually been around for several years, which really tells you about some of their staying power. So what kinds of credentials are being bought and sold? Most recently, researchers at Flare identified credentials for sale providing access to applications and services often used by corporations, so Salesforce, HubSpot, QuickBooks, Amazon AWS, Google Cloud, Okta, and DocuSign. So as you can see, these credentials can not only be used for access to all of these systems, several can provide access to sensitive corporate information, employee data, or additional data that would benefit a financially motivated threat actor. It could be used for malicious purposes like highly targeted spear phishing attacks against the company's employees or third parties it works with, or exfiltrated for extortion purposes, whether or not a ransomware attack takes place. As a result, the risk posed by credentials for sale on the dark web is more than centered around ransomware attacks. While that is the focus of today's discussions, I'm sure the concerns we have around securing our organization's networks extend beyond just this and may include other cyber criminal activity or possibly even espionage. So outside of the credential sales on the dark web, threat actors can acquire credentials once inside the network. A couple of areas they might look include Linux bash history, system administrator notes, internal tools with baked-in passwords, or note files containing passwords. Part of the opportunity here, especially with those system administrator notes or some internal tools, is that these credentials will possibly allow them to move laterally to other systems in the network or elevate their privileges, thereby increasing the impact of a potential ransomware attack. In addition to just finding credentials in plain text on the system, a threat actor could use other techniques to obtain credential material, such as pass the hash or pass the ticket, which relate to capturing valid password hashes, post-authentication, and Kerberos ticket generation, respectively. And these techniques can be accomplished with common off-the-shelf commodity tools. So Mimikatz, Cobalt Strike, CrackMap Exec, and more. I'm sure you've heard of several of them. And this makes them simple enough to accomplish for even a less technically capable threat actor. Finally, credentials can be the gift that keeps on giving, so to speak, for several reasons. So first, while many understand why reusing passwords or using weak passwords is risky, that's not uncommon for people to do, especially if there's no way of enforcing for them not to. They might use one password for an account at work and then use the same one for accounts they use on their personal computer, or use an old favorite password that they are unaware has been compromised for a work utility. As a result, a threat actor may acquire credentials once, not even by obtaining them from your organization's systems or employees, and then be able to use them in the future as they get reused or their owners move to a new job and reuse them. Next, and very similarly, after an incident occurs and we get everyone to change their passwords and make sure we reevaluate access permissions, it's entirely possible to miss something. For example, an externally facing test server that an employee spun up on their own, or a legacy system with internet access that was accidentally omitted from a network diagram in the DR or IR plan. So now that we understand why credentials can pose a risk, especially for initial access and escalation of an attack, let's talk about what we can do about the risk. I'll start with some of the more well-known ones with which we're familiar, but can really benefit us, especially if we don't have a huge number of resources to devote to this. So enforcing the use of strong passwords, enforcing the use of multi-factor authentication, pruning or auditing accounts as employees come and go, and monitoring leak credentials can really go a long way. Since we also have a few talks today around the mitigation and recovery component of ransomware, we should also discuss that aspect. So as I mentioned previously, one sign that a threat actor may be doing something malicious, credential related or not, is the use of malicious tools like Cobalt Strike, Mimikatz, or CrackMap Exec. You can also look for accesses to credential storage locations on Windows. This includes the Windows Credential Manager or Security Account Manager, while Mac OS and Linux also have their own. However, we can also look for signs that credentials are being used in other ways. So outside of these tools, such as unusual logins on the system that are not accessed frequently, or multiple failed logins from one IP, such as would be visible from credential stuffing. And finally, on to recovery. I'm not going to belabor the need for an IR/DR plan since they definitely provide many different benefits. But one benefit they provide that is related to credentials is they provide an accurate inventory of systems on the network for which passwords and access would need to be reevaluated in the case of ransomware attack. I want to underscore that there's no way to entirely cover all the ways to reduce risks around credentials in each of these three prevention, mitigation, and recovery stages of a ransomware attack in just the time I have here today. But I hope some of these points give you a couple things to consider as you hear from the vendors here today. So again, thank you, Actual Tech Media, for having me today, and back over to you, Jess.
Awesome, Lindsay. Thank you so much. What a great way to start out this day. And I think as you've said, we've got lots of great info to get into. So we will leave it there and head on in. Lindsay, thanks again for kicking us off.
Sure, thank you.
All right, and now it's your turn to participate. So stretch out those fingers, run back to your keyboard if you stood up or stepped away from your laptop, and click on the poll here. What we're wondering is, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? Obviously, today we're talking about ransomware. So when you're thinking about making any changes or updates to your ransomware strategies at your organization, what is the time frame that you have in mind? Again, no wrong answers here. This just gives us an idea of where you're at in terms of your planning so that our speakers can kind of adjust and make sure they're hitting you with the information that's going to be pertinent to you. I am seeing that we are split almost exactly even in every category. That is crazy. It is very, very small differences between these categories. So you guys are spread all over the board in terms of timelines. And you know what? That's awesome, because we're going to have something for everyone today. Speaking of, let's get into it. I think it's about time to get this thing rolling here. So I am pretty excited to introduce you all to our first two expert presenters, because as you can see from the screen, we have the dream team here with us. To kick things off today, we will be hearing from Bob Brown, Lead Solutions Engineer at TierPoint, and Sarah Doherty, Product Marketing Manager at Zerto. Bob and Sarah, thank you so much for being here with us today to kick off this megacast. I know you have some awesome content lined up for us, and we want to get into some questions at the end. So I'm going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away, team.
Everyone, my name is Sarah Doherty. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Zerto, an HPE company. And today I'll be co-presenting with Bob Brown, who's a Lead Solutions Engineer Recovery Services at TierPoint. We plan to talk about the topic of ransomware and focus on best practices for prevention, mitigation, and recovery. As we all know, ransomware has become a word that everybody is very aware of. It's something that we need to think about and plan for. 61% of disaster recovery responses last year were triggered by ransomware. If you look at the number, it took an average of 21 days to recover. This is just not acceptable in today's business environment. The continued and growing threat of ransomware has become a C-level priority for all organizations. Unfortunately, it's not a unique situation. We hear it more and more. It's really part of the larger picture related to disruptions, business disruptions that can have a major effect on companies. It can affect your customers. It can affect your reputation, obviously your bottom line. We don't need that. The total estimated cost of ransomware is expected to be upwards of $265 billion by 2031. Let's think about that. That's less than a decade away. That time will go very, very quickly. And it's something that we need to address, and we need to be focused on it. And Zerto and TierPoint are here to help you. Let's reduce the high cost of downtime. Realistically, single-digit RPOs really do matter. It's not a PR story. Taking your RPO down to seconds can save an enormous amount of money, no matter what industry or segment or vertical or anything that you're in. Time is money, data is money, and put together, you're talking a very high cost of downtime with legacy solutions. When your RPO and RTO are measured in hours, every single incident or outage ends up costing much more than it must. $2 to $8 million in these examples. Zerto allows you to radically reduce data loss and downtime by recovering within minutes at scale from any point in time. We provide the ability to rewind and resume operations without having to go to last night's backup or a replicated snapshot that's already aged itself out. That's what's happening with legacy data protection solutions. Simply choose a checkpoint that's just 5 or 15 seconds prior to the incident, then roll back within a few minutes to pick up right where you or your application left off. Just think about all the money you could be saving. Let Zerto and TierPoint help you to achieve this. And how are we able to achieve these super low RPOs and RTOs is with our technology and our key differentiators that Zerto brings compared to everyone else in the market. First is our hypervisor-based replication that is native and agentless to ensure continuous data protection for your business. Second is the unique journaling technology to ensure you can recover and resume from any point in time for seconds to years. Third, we ensure your applications are moved or recovered as one entity, so it's about application consistency. Cloud mobility. Zerto brings scale-out architecture built for the enterprise. And lastly is simplicity. It's at the core to everything we do. Simplicity of deployment, ease of use, built-in orchestration, and analytics. Let's start with continuous data protection, also known as CDP, which is made possible with Zerto's block-level replication. It's near synchronous replication, which is the best of both synchronous and asynchronous approaches. Because we sit at the hypervisor level, we can be fully software-only solution that is totally independent of the underlying hardware and infrastructure, including storage. Zerto works well across hypervisors, clouds, and platforms in the background without impacting production. And that's a key feature, not impacting production. The continuous work in the background is completely hands-off for you. No dealing with backup windows or creating schedules, no managing snapshots or dealing with agents. You simply set it up, replicate, and it stays always on to keep you up and running always. This is where TierPoint can help you to engage with you to make sure that you get the most out of our software. Part of what makes CDP, continuous data protection with Zerto, so powerful is the unique journaling capabilities. The Zerto journal tracks every single change made in your application or on your server, and it logs these as checkpoints every 5 or 10 seconds, even when you have hundreds or thousands of servers. It can store the change data for 1 hour up to 30 days, and it offers you unmatched granularity when it comes to recovery. So if you get hit with a ransomware attack, for example, at 10 a.m., it's very easy to roll back to 9:59 and 55 seconds and completely mitigate the infection. It's key. You want to be able to save your data and go back to a point in time which will make the most sense for your business. Zerto and TierPoint can help you achieve this. Legacy data protection makes it more difficult for IT teams like yours by offering restore points from very inconsistent points in time, extending RTO, and obviously complicating recovery. Zerto, on the other hand, solves for the challenge of recovering complex enterprise apps by protecting your workloads as a cohesive, logical entity. This eliminates the inconsistent recovery of multi-VM applications where each VM is being restored to a different point in time. And this is more than just bundling VMs together as a group to help with management. With Zerto, when creating recovery points, all the VMs will share the same validated checkpoint with write order fidelity across all. Again, I want to repeat that same validated checkpoint with write order fidelity across all. That's critical. What this means is that when the application is recovered, every VM that makes up the application spins up from that same cross VM recovery point. All these come together in the boot order of your choice without any extra work on your part. Bottom line here is that this allows you to protect and recover complex multi-VM applications together as one unit to the exact same point in time. Bob will discuss how the TierPoint team can help you save resources when you're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery. One way to demonstrate Zerto's orchestration and automation is with failover testing. Reduce testing time, complexity involved, and test often and comprehensively. As we all know, with the DR plan, it's really critical to test. You don't want to get to that point where you haven't tested it and something happens and you're not able to do what you think you should be able to do. One example is from an insurance company who used to have extensive runbooks and lengthy DR exercises. With Zerto, they've reduced that by 98% and taken a complicated 3.5-day process down to only a couple hours. They're just one of many customers who realize value every day from our non-disruptive testing and the fast RTOs that we provide. Let's take a look at an example from one of Zerto's customers, Tenkata, a company that manufactures protective fabric for firefighting, military, and other demanding occupations, was using antiquated backup tapes and disks as their recovery solution. When a ransomware attack happened, they faced a 12-hour data loss and 2 weeks of recovery. Their services are too critical and the impact on revenue was unacceptable. That's where continuous data protection by Zerto really changed things. They shifted their business continuity and disaster recovery strategy to Zerto CDP instead of using backup tape and disk as their data protection strategy. Instead of their entire file server being affected, only the directories on a file server were affected. They went from facing 12 hours minimum of data loss to only 10 seconds. And instead of taking weeks to fully recover, they now took less than 10 minutes. Think about that, from weeks of recovery hours of data loss to just a few seconds. This can be critical to the success of any business, and that's where Zerto and TierPoint really want to help. Our differentiators are simple. At Zerto, we get your business back up and running in minutes with only seconds of data loss, all with the flexibility to test without disruption. TierPoint can help you achieve your goals with our Zerto CDP solution. If you look at it, number one, we resume operations at scale in minutes. 2, recover to a state seconds before an attack or disruption. And 3, de-risk your recovery with an instant, non-disruptive testing. It's a plan that is comprehensive that'll help you to have an always-on business. We recently launched our newest and most innovative version of Zerto yet, Zerto 10. Building on our already best-in-class data protection capabilities, Zerto 10 now delivers real-time ransomware detection to pinpoint and mitigate the earliest stages of a cyber attack. Be sure to work with your TierPoint team as Zerto 10 becomes available. I'd like to pass it over to Bob now so he can talk a little bit, obviously, about what TierPoint can do to help you take advantage of all these Zerto capabilities. Take it away, Bob.
Thanks, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, my name is Bob Brown. I'm a lead solutions engineer here at TierPoint, and I'm focused on disaster recovery services. I want to begin by thanking everybody today for taking some time out and joining us on this webinar. I'm going to start off by giving a little background on TierPoint for those of you who might not be familiar with our company, letting you know who we are and what we do, and then we can jump into how TierPoint and Zerto partner together to provide solutions to protect you and your company from the effects of ransomware. TierPoint operates one of the largest data center footprints in the United States with over 40 locations, all interconnected with their own fiber network with speeds of up to 100 gigabits. We have cloud on-ramps to all of the major hyperscale providers that are available from any of our data centers. And with our geographically diverse data centers and our interconnectivity options, TierPoint is well positioned to provide a solution to protect your company's environment. So beyond our co-location data center services, TierPoint provides a wide variety of services to our clients to help them meet their IT and business requirements. TierPoint offers customized cloud solutions using our multi-tenant cloud, which is available in 8 data centers across the United States. Hosted private cloud services with dedicated hardware are available in any of our data centers. And we also provide public cloud services within AWS and Azure. For customers that are running IBM power systems and mainframes, TierPoint offers solutions for both production and DR services on these platforms. We offer a full suite of security services that can be wrapped around any of our managed solutions. TierPoint also provides consulting and professional services to our customers across our full portfolio of solutions, including assistance with business impact analysis to assist in your disaster recovery planning. TierPoint and Zerto have partnered together to provide a solution that is recognized as a leader in the disaster recovery as a service market. TierPoint has been recognized by Zerto as a managed service provider for several years. We were the Growth Managed Service Partner of the Year in 2020 and have been the Managed Service Provider of the Year for the last 3 years in a row. Sarah mentioned a few minutes ago that ransomware is on the rise across all industries. So why is it on the rise? Well, ransomware toolkits are available on the dark web and are easily downloaded with detailed instructions on how to deploy the kits. Well, once these kits are deployed, cyber criminals are keeping the kits in the environments for weeks or months, waiting to find the most valuable data to exploit. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of companies that were rushed to put in place some type of a work from home strategy. And they pushed out these remote access solutions without really considering all of the security implications. These attacks have also become much more sophisticated and are better disguised as coming from a trusted source. And lastly, we make it easy for them. IT staffs are not always able to ensure that the systems are up to date on patches. Part of the issue also falls onto us, the users. We're all busy and working as fast as we can. We may see an email coming from our IT team. We open it up and follow the instructions, not aware that we just infected the systems in our environment. Businesses need to take a holistic approach to the ransomware protection. We need to look at proactive and reactive solutions, as no single solution can completely protect an organization from the ransomware attacks. From a preventative stance, we want to ensure that we have layers of security in place or defense in depth to protect your company's valuable data. Utilizing next-gen firewalls, multi-factor authentication, threat intelligence solutions, email security, as well as others are all key in preventing ransomware. Also, ensuring your employees have proper security awareness training can also help prevent ransomware. So, as we said, no solution is going to be 100% effective against ransomware prevention. So we need to think about what happens if your systems become infected. Having a cloud-based recovery solution from TierPoint, powered by Zerto, provides you with the peace of mind in knowing that you have a tested disaster recovery solution in place where your environment can easily be recovered by industry-trained experts. You're probably asking, why should I use TierPoint for disaster recovery in the case of ransomware? Well, we have teams of trained professionals to support your environment in the event of a disaster such as a ransomware attack. With years of experience in recoveries and testing our customers' environments, you can be assured that your recovery needs are in good hands. As one of the leading disaster recovery providers, our teams have the experience to provide a seamless implementation process to ensure that all of your critical business needs are going to be met during this process. TierPoint offers multiple solutions for your cloud-based recovery based on the size and the compliance requirements of your business. These will provide an OpEx-based solution to minimize the capital outlay in building a disaster recovery solution. So now we can talk a little bit more about the actual services provided by TierPoint. All of our solutions are going to be built on enterprise-class hardware. The disaster recovery targets are typically going to be either one of our multi-tenant cloud pods, or it's going to be a hosted private cloud solution managed by TierPoint. Both the hosted private and multi-tenant solutions are built to N+1 specifications. This is a warm site solution. We're not pulling out hardware when you need to test or have a disaster and trying to configure the environment. Utilizing Zerto as the data mover, your data is waiting at the target DR environment to be promoted and recover the VMs. We provide an industry-leading SLA backed by recovery time objective of 10 VMs recovered every 15 minutes. Now, this is just the SLA. Your environment is probably going to come up much faster than this. It's also a subscription-based DR service. Your service will be all-inclusive of the Zerto licensing, computing requirements for the environment, target storage, which is going to be based on the journal sizing, replication bandwidth, and a management option. TierPoint offers both a self-managed option for customers who want to manage their recoveries internally and a fully managed option where TierPoint personnel are responsible for recovering the environment for the customers. This allows the IT teams of the customer to focus on getting the production environment back up and running. All of the DR solutions at TierPoint include annual testing hours to ensure that your environment is properly protected. Our cloud-based recovery solution powered by Zerto includes 72 hours of annual testing, and additional testing can be added if required. After testing, you'll receive an attestation of the test that can be provided to auditors with proof of a successful test. Once a DR event like ransomware happens, your environment will be brought up at the TierPoint disaster recovery site. We're going to work with you to determine the proper recovery point from your continuous data protection points, which will allow you to bring up the environment prior to being encrypted, and at that time you can remediate the ransomware from the environment. After the environment is confirmed clean and your production environment is ready, we can fail back the environment from the TierPoint location to your primary production environment and resume the normal business operations. At TierPoint, we really strive to partner with our customers to achieve the desired results of the disaster recovery programs. We try to take the time in the pre-sales process to understand the business needs of our customers and ensure that the solution being delivered was going to meet those needs. We dig into the details of the environment to ensure that we're covering all aspects of the recovery, including employee access, partner access, customer access, security requirements that are often overlooked. All of these details are going to be incorporated into the overall design and will also be included in the DR runbook that our teams put together. As mentioned previously, we can also provide consulting services if the companies require a business impact analysis, disaster recovery assessment, business continuity, and disaster recovery strategies. We even have options for business continuity DRCs within many of our disaster recovery centers that provide a location for you and your employees to go to during an event. Our dedicated team of disaster recovery engineers are fully focused on ensuring your DRAS environment will be fully operational if a DR event should occur. They're going to be monitoring the status of the replication of your environment, validating the status of your runbook, and testing the solution regularly. If you'd like to learn more about TierPoint Disaster Recovery Solutions and how we can help with ransomware, you can visit us on the web at www.tierpoint.com. You'll be able to review our products and services, and we'll be able to chat with one of our solutions advisors online. If you prefer to call us, you can reach us at 877-859-8437. One of our DR experts will discuss your company's business requirements for disaster recovery solution. They'll discuss the different services we can offer, share industry trends that they're seeing across TierPoint, and they'll also work with you to set up the next steps to ensure that we can help you achieve your goals. And both Sarah and I would like to really thank everybody for their participation in the webinar today. We hope it was informative, and we hope to hear from you in the future. Thanks. I hope everybody has a great day.
Oh, hi, folks. Sorry about that. I was talking without my microphone turned on. I do want to say thank you to Bob and to Sarah for that incredible presentation, as well as Anthony, who's joined us now. So we have the whole TierPoint Zerto Power team with us. And I can't wait to dive into some audience questions. Before we do that, I do want to point out that we've got the poll question up on the screen for you here. And what we're wondering is, what additional information would you like to get about the TierPoint and Zerto solution? So obviously we got a great overview from Sarah and Bob, and there's so much more to dig into. So click on the poll right now and let these teams know how they can follow up with you. Anthony, Sarah, Bob, you guys ready to jump into some audience Q&A here?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Resounding yeses. I love it. Okay. Well, let's start with this one here, because today we're talking about best practices, and we are getting a lot of questions around that sort of, how often and when and how. So I want to start with this question. How often do I need to do DR testing?
So yeah, this is Bob with TierPoint. So I'll kind of start off with that, and then I'll let Anthony jump in if he has any other thing you want to add in there. At TierPoint, we really encourage everybody to test their environments at least once a year. And that's doing a full test of their DR environment, bringing the entire environment up. A lot of customers will also want to test sub portions of their environment, just specific applications multiple times a year. They may test application A in the spring, application B in the summer, and then in the fall or winter do a full environment test to ensure that everything's working. And it's going to really be critical, not only for your peace of mind knowing that everything's working, but also for compliance requirements that you're going to need for that. So Anthony, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Anthony, are you with us? Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling because we've had a little bit of. Oh, Anthony, can we hear you? Maybe, Anthony, I'll ask you to refresh your browser, sorry, and then maybe come back in and we'll get you back in here. All right, sorry about that. Moving on to our next question here. Let's see, do we need any additional hardware? Oh, good question. Do we need any additional hardware in order to run Zerto?
So Zerto. Go ahead, Anthony. I'll let you run that one.
Welcome back, Anthony.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Anthony. You're good.
No problem. So super quick, just to answer on that last part too, right? Zerto, super quick automation, orchestration between the two. So testing failovers are very easy. Obviously, we agree with Bob as to when the frequency to do them. But is there extra hardware? No. Zerto is a software only solution. It's hypervisor based replication. So really wherever you have another target for us to replicate to is where we can provide that disaster recovery from in between.
Awesome. Okay. And I want to dig into this one here because there was a comment on journaling. So you mentioned journaling. Can we talk about how quickly we could recover? And then on that, this person here has clearly had some bad luck with this. They're saying, is it going to be weeks or months?
Yeah, no, absolutely. With Zerto, it's a lot different. That's the journal is what makes our replication software unique and is what really allows for the thing that I always harp on is a DVR like rollback for your virtual machines in case an event actually does occur. So we're actually looking at a lot of our RPOs of recovery point objectives are around 5 seconds, thousands of virtual machines coming back online at the same time, 5 seconds before an attack happened, and really propagating just as quickly back up. So with Zerto, right, a much more operational recovery sort of process when you are recovering with the software compared to like something, that might take a little bit more time if you're doing like a snapshot based or something that was tiered off to another point. But I think if you really want optimal speed and things like that, working with like tier point, right, Bob, in order to do like a DRAS solution, I think is probably always your best bet.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just agreeing with what Anthony said. That was that. Sorry.
Kudos. Awesome. I love it. Okay. So I do want to keep going with this, but I think we're getting pretty close to the end of our time. So I'm going to start to wrap things up. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is I'd like to know what in this field do you think really makes TierPoint and Zerto solutions stand out? And then as the final kind of bring us home for anyone that wants to get started, what do you recommend as that first step? So I'll let you split that up amongst yourselves.
Yeah, Bob, you wanted to start that off? I think really the main value prop is with you guys.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously I think, as we're talking throughout the presentation, the biggest value that we have is TierPoint utilizes Zerto. We're one of their largest providers, managed service providers. We have the background on implementing this. We've got over 15,000 VMs under management with Zerto. So we've got the team that's going to be there. During a disaster, a lot of times, the customer may not have people that are going to be focused on disaster recovery. They're going to be focused on getting their environment back up and operating. So having a team of knowledgeable professionals that are utilizing a tool like Zerto, which is an industry leader, is going to really be a key component when you actually have a disaster.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And then from our perspective, if you're looking to get more engaged with Zerto, I always suggest our hands-on labs. Google Zerto hands-on labs and get playing with the solution today.
Perfect. That's a great way to wrap things up. As much as I wish we could keep going here because I could chat with you guys about this all day, we'll have to continue it in a future megacast. But for now, I want to thank all 3 of you for being here and for some great information. I know we've got a ton of questions that we did not get to. I see your team working busily on live chat, so we'll keep those answers coming in, and we will make sure that anything that doesn't get answered today on live chat does get a follow-up via email. So thank you to both the TierPoint and Zerto teams for that. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys.
Thanks. Have a great day.
All right. And we are going to keep things rolling in the presentation here today. Keep clicking on that poll if you haven't already. I will also remind you to head on over to the handouts tab and be sure you've got that fact sheet, cloud to cloud recovery, exploring how to achieve resiliency with disaster recovery automation for diverse environments. So click on the poll, grab those handouts, get those last questions in because we do have the team here answering on live chat. And while you're doing all of those good things, I'm going to give away a prize. So let's do a $300 Amazon gift card as well as one of those new 15-inch M2 MacBook Airs. All right, our very first lucky winner here with us today is Brian Dorner of Arizona. Brian Dorner of Arizona, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And our first winner of a new 15-inch M2 MacBook Air is Cameron Covey of Oklahoma. Cameron Covey of Oklahoma. So congratulations to each of you. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap up the webinar. Now, don't forget, there are still more chances to win that gift card as well as that laptop as we go through our sessions today, plus that best question gift card from each session. So keep those questions coming in. Even if we don't get to you live, you are still entered to win. All right, well, we are going to keep things rolling here on the MegaCast because, boy, it just keeps building and the fun keeps coming, right? So up next, I am so excited to introduce you all to Aaron Murphy, Field CTO Americas at Veeam. Aaron, thank you so much for being here with us today on the MegaCast. I know you have a lot of great information to dig into, so we're going to get started right away. Take it away, Aaron.
Hi there, my name is Aaron Murphy. I'm the Field CTO for the Americas here at Veeam. This talk is about ransomware, but more really best practices for prevention or being prepared, mitigating the risk of attack, making sure you can recover, and how to plan for that recovery to be the most flexible and the most capable you can be. What I'd like to do first, though, is put ransomware into context. And what I'm going to do for that is use Veeam primary research. We do quite a number of primary research across organizations, not just Veeam customers. And we describe the cohort that we want to attract, and we execute the research with a professional organization. It can be very helpful for yourself as artifacts to use to build a business case or build interest in a project. In this subject matter, data protection or ransomware, and making sure that you can use it to help your organization do better in the future, especially if you combine it with other industry analysts or commentators, then it really gives it some strength. So the Ransomware Trends Report, this was 1,200 unbiased IT leaders. They came from CISO or security professional type positions, and they had to have suffered at least one attack in their working lives to participate in this survey. So let's look at what one of the first pieces of data was. And actually this one comes from our Data Protection Trends Report, where we can ask a broader question. So here we asked, over the past 2 years, what were the most common causes of outages that your organization experienced, and what was the most impactful? Not really any surprise, but the cybersecurity event is there at the top. It's most impactful because it's the only one of the others, like accidental deletion, application software outage, server hardware failure, where you could have data impacted on a massive scale. Data could be attacked, destroyed, deleted, encrypted. And also that the data needs to be cleaned when you restore it from restore, so you're not leaving any malware or backdoors there. So there's a longer outage period, and therefore the pain and the impact is greater. So no real surprises there. However, this one is pretty interesting. So how many ransomware attacks has your organization suffered in the last 12 months? Well, that's 85%, and that's up from 76% last year. So it's on the rise, which is not great. And I think that's well known and well documented from ourselves and elsewhere. The other stat here is that 66% of organizations suffered more than one attack. I think that's something we can kind of look at. Maybe it's something we can solve and help organizations not to be part of that statistic. So what could be causing it? Well, if we look here, we asked, how do you ensure a clean restore? So 44%, if you look at it here, first restore to an isolated test area or sandbox to scan before production. That's something we've been doing in our product for a long time, and we thoroughly recommend that as a best practice. If you have cyber insurance professionals or involved in helping you recover, then it's probably going to be mandated. However, if 44% did do that, 56% restored and then scanned, they restored and monitored and hoped for the best, and we didn't verify anything before restoring. But it means that they didn't guarantee it was clean before they went back into production. I think there's correlation between these two numbers. I can't prove in my research causation, but I do know from other commentators, vendors, analysts that if data isn't clean before going back into production, what they're saying is that many organizations suffer an immediate reactivation of malware and the onset of the secondary attack. And so I think based on that, we can say there is some causation here, and you really should be looking to clean your restores if that's your method of recovering from an attack. Let's look at the attack and recovery, and what happened, what was impacted, and how was the recovery for organizations in the survey. So we asked, where were you hit? What type of platform was affected in the last ransomware attack? I think it's fairly self-evident in this chart that everything's the same. Data center, remote offices, cloud-hosted platforms, they were all attacked in a similar way. It kind of says it's pretty clear all data needs to be protected and the risk of ransomware mitigated. Now, we also asked, did they attack your backup repositories? Well, you can see here that in 93% of the time, if you add all these parts up together, they did attack the backup repositories. And why? Well, the cyber criminals are investing time and money in their endeavor. It's not a business I would recommend or enjoy, but it is a business. Sometimes they buy hacked credentials as their starting point. They need to get a return on their investment. If they can attack the backup repositories, they're more highly assured of getting a payout and therefore being successful in their business venture. And what we want to do is do as much as possible to make sure their ROI cannot be returned and we're not seen as a good bet, and that they move on somewhere else. And one of the ways to do that is make sure you have all your backup repositories protected and out of the reach of ransomware attackers. Now, this was another interesting one from the data protection trends, but also tied in with ransomware. We talked about that greater impact and outage of data being affected, having to scan and clean the data before bringing things back into production. What that's kind of resulted in is a scenario where organizations are suffering from what IT knows is possible and what the business knows, wants, or expects, perhaps. So my organization has a gap between how fast we can recover versus how fast we need to be recovered. 82% between strongly agree and agree. So that's a huge gap. And my organization has a gap between how frequently our data is backed up versus how much data we can afford to lose. So that's data loss. Again, 79%, 35 strongly agree and 44 agree that that's a problem. It's a huge gap. So what we're looking for is faster, low impact, frequent ways to protect data more often, and faster, quicker ways to recover that data, almost like design to recover the data based on an SLA. It's what people need to make sure they don't have this reality gap between IT and the business. So let's summarize. I think I summarized it into 3 lessons learned from the data. Back up everything, including data in the cloud. It's all under attack and in an equally aggressive way. Protect those backups. Put them beyond the reach of your administrators. Put them on immutable storage that can't be modified by your admins, and therefore they're protected. In many of the very impactful attacks where a lot of data is encrypted it's because there was an admin account with elevated privileges that enabled the attacker to do more damage. So put them beyond your admins, your trusted people, and therefore they're also beyond the attackers. And design for secure recovery. That's recovery that's being cleaned of malware and dormant threats, and that can be recovered to any number of alternate locations, I would say, because you don't know what you don't know, and have a plan A and a plan B. So let's have a look at the Veeam data platform and how we've taken that learning from our research in the industry, our customers, how we've built a product around it, and how we recommend you use the product capabilities to solve these problems. Be better prepared with remedies and preparation for recovery. We talked about the attack being everywhere, therefore we have a solution that protects the cloud and the data center and SaaS. You can see the primary cloud platform vendors, but also new cloud native approaches like Kubernetes for deploying and maintaining applications. We protect that too. Microsoft 365 and Salesforce, and all the virtual, physical, and applications that you might need typically in your data center. Now, all of these workloads that we protect are protected in the Veeam data platform that has a full suite of APIs that are used to connect the products, but also connect into integrations with your service products, with your event management products, so you can get a full picture of what's happening. We have that fast recovery, instant recovery from the backup infrastructure, so it doesn't cost you extra, and from that you can do recovery testing. You can recover to this sandbox and do your scanning and clean backups before you push them back into production. So that's a really valuable capability. We have monitoring analytics that can help you do things such as identify major changes that may be indicative of an attack, or it may be to enforce a policy, like making sure that you have immutability turned on the right kind of data in the right number of locations, and that's enforced by policy. But it could also be recovery orchestration. So let's automate and simplify the complex tasks, remove human error and human delay, and really streamline that whole process. And we can do that with recovery orchestration. But also that can be used to continually test proactively the recovery of applications and make sure they're going to work when you need them to work. And it might not be just about a ransomware attack. It could be, and I've seen this happen, where databases report through their APIs a good backup, and they continue to run, and they keep reporting a good backup, but databases need to have maintenance tasks often, like consistency checks. Well, as part of our recovery orchestration, we can build that in. We can help you make sure that your applications and your databases are rock solid, are working, and we can proactively discover any problems before you find out when you've got a problem. We can help be proactive against that. So there's a lot of value here, and not just in terms of ransomware attacks. The thing that we have been recommending for some time is this. It's the data protection zip code. It's a little longer than the regular 321, and for good reason. Primary copy of data and at least 2 copies. Different media, different credentials stops that lateral movement. If they have one account, they don't have the secondary one, therefore they can't get across and they can't damage both copies of that media. Put one of them off-site for local issues like fire and flood. Make sure at least one of them is air-gapped or immutable, but I would really recommend making both of them immutable, and that you've tested recovery frequently and proactively, and there are 0 errors because it always comes back, because you're solving any problems before they happen. That is the way to, prepare for recovery and mitigate the risks of ransomware, because you've got secure data and you can recover it. So what are the ways we can help you with that? Well, we have a lot of flexibility on immutability options. You've got choice. And choice isn't, oh, I've got to make lots of this. Choice is a good thing because I can reutilize hardware that I already have, say on the left here in the data center. I could use a dedupe appliance with immutability. I could use snapshots with immutability. I could use a dedicated appliance or a hardened repository. I could use snapshots with immutability. I could use a dedicated appliance or a hardened repository, or even an object storage device with immutability in my data center. We're showing here in capacity and long-term archiving, typical cloud platforms of object storage with immutability. We do that very efficiently. We do it at the object level. That means we're not going to pay extra or too much for storing it. We're doing it always in a cost-efficient way, and especially in the archive tier, when you're storing data for longer. And that can be a good thing to do because we know that sometimes attacks are elongated from when they first break into your system and establish a base and start to move laterally across your environment. It could be an extended period of 100 plus days. It'd be great to have at least some data to cover that time period to make sure that you've got at least one immutable copy of all data before an attack is instigated and a ransom asked for. So that can be really valuable to have this choice. The right price, the right performance for every workload in your environment. Now this seems obvious, and I've been doing enterprise data protection and recovery for many, many years, and this always used to be what we designed for recovery. But over time, the systems got faster, things got very predictable. There became a focus on the backup. Can it be efficient? Can it store less data? Because it was highly unlikely, as systems were highly available, that I had to do a lot of restores, or if I did, it was on a granular level. And so we kind of get into this past state. But what we really need to do is go back to the present state, where backup is very, very important, and restore is very, very important, but design for that restore. And I'm very pleased to say at Veeam, that's always been our focus. This instant restore that we have, you can run it in parallel, you can run it at scale, and you can run it on your choice of hardware, but it's always highly performant. We've seen differences of $500,000 between one vendor and their standard appliance box versus doing it with Veeam and a typical backup device, because we can do it in a highly performant way, and we focused on recovery in the design of our product. So that can be a real win when all other things are equal. We talked in the research about the risk of not cleaning data, and organizations getting immediately attacked as malware is reactivated. Well, that's a real issue. So we recommend the use of something like the Veeam Secure Restore, which scans using AV signatures to detect the malware and then give you the option to clean it from the environment before pushing into production. So that's very helpful in a ransomware attack, because that's something you need to do. Recover to a sandbox, forensically analyze and clean the data, put it back into production. But it can also be used proactively. Look at this timeline. Malicious file downloaded, AV vendor on primary system doesn't know about it, so it makes it past. It gets copied into the backup. At a later date, the AV vendor becomes aware, they build a new signature, the signature is released, my AV scanner will now know about it. So I might find it on the primary system, but what I can do with Veeam is schedule it to look back at backups from a few days ago and start doing that proactively. We mount that backup, we scan it, and we decide whether it's clean or not, and that's whether it's a good recovery point or not. So we can be very proactive. Sometimes this can be the first place you can discover an attack, because it's easy to go do full scans of things that are in a backup copy because it's away from production. So there's two major benefits to the technology here, and we recommend using that at all times. The other thing we think is important is data mobility. It's important in preparation for recovery from a ransomware attack, but it's important in everyday operations for more and more customers. So what we're saying here is no matter where I took the backup from, VMware, where I put it to, Amazon, I can recover it to any other format. I can recover it to Amazon EC2, I can recover it to Azure, and vice versa. I can go from a cloud format to a VMware or Hyper-V format. I've got that control, and that's really powerful. That's powerful in a ransomware attack, because what we've seen is many organizations, they get that, the law enforcement involved, and they say that equipment there is evidence, you can't overwrite that, get new equipment. And there becomes this kind of issue with supply chain and acquiring the hardware. Great thing with Veeam, we can use any hardware, so no matter what you backed it up to, you can restore it to something else. You've got that choice. You're not tied down to getting back one device because you bought a solution, because it's not a solution that just requires that one device. So you've got choices, and that helps. And we've seen that help. But also we've seen organizations recover to the cloud for the first time because they couldn't get hardware for an entire environment, and the only instantaneous infrastructure they could bring on demand was in the cloud. So they were able to take the mobility of our backup format, push it to the cloud, and recover and get back into production in a more timely method because they had this technology. So it's very, very important. But what we also see is it's very important in everyday life. We see more and more organizations having a data center, having one preferred cloud, but they want to have the option to have a second and tertiary cloud provider. They want to be able to be mobile in their workloads for commercial reasons, for technical reasons. They maybe even want to go back to the data center with some workloads, but they want that mobility of choice, and they want it built into their everyday operation. So it's really, really powerful. So now that we know you've got all those options, it's really deciding in your plan where you'll recover to. Your disaster recovery site, maybe one for some workloads. You may have a secondary plan for the cloud, or you may use a service provider who's built a solution around Veeam, helps you offload the data to another secure location with different credentials, puts it out of the reach of ransomware attackers, but they can also assist you with different service levels to recover in the event of DR. So that could be a good option. I think across the board, we have a lot to offer. We have over 450,000 customers, a lot of experience. We have a lot of research. We have a very proven product, market-leading product. We've also got a dedicated ransomware support team. We have accredited service providers who can deliver and implement secure systems to the Veeam standards. We have an ecosystem of integrated partners, storage and software that can help you build the most cost-effective, most highly performant environment that can be recovered in a timely manner to meet that reality gap and close it down to a time and a frequency that meets your business requirements. We also have is the potential to buy Veeam, buy the right services with Veeam to benefit from our ransomware warranty protection. So we have how you should implement it and the best practices documented, and you can follow that and you can make sure that you've got a good system and you're protected, and we'll back you on that. So that could be a real great option. It'll give you a higher level of comfort than maybe you had before. So I'm going to leave this on the screen for a minute, just talk about it. So here's 4 different pieces of research. You can see the short links, or you can look at the QR codes. Data protection trends, 4,200 unbiased organizations. You've got real world downtime statistics. What are the cyber strategies? What are they doing for containers? What are they doing for cloud? How have things changed from year to year? Really powerful information. Ransomware trends, people who have suffered attacks, what happened? How did they remediate? What were the lessons learned? Cloud protection trends. A lot of organizations wanted to move to the cloud for data protection. How are people managing it? What are their experience with native tools versus buying a commercial off-the-shelf software like Veeam, and what's driving that change? So we've got the data, we have presentations, and we have summary booklets that help you interpret that. And I recommend that you download these and use them. Use them as one of the artifacts, along with things from other analysts, to say, hey, look, we're not alone with this reality gap. We're not alone with these challenges for ransomware, but we know what to do and we know what's going on in the industry, and we think this is a good way forward. So it can be very, very useful in helping you make those changes in your organization and deliver more success for the future. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Oh, well, thank you, Aaron. What a wonderful presentation, full of great information. And I really love the point that you made at the end about, knowing that we're not in this alone. And of course, that's what we're here to talk about today. Now, we do have a poll question up on the screen for you. What we're wondering is what additional information you would like to get about the Veeam solution. So take a minute right now and be sure you're clicking on that poll. I will also encourage you to head to the handouts tab. If you missed those QR codes that Aaron just had up on the screen, you can actually find the full 2023 global report on ransomware trends, some lessons learned from about 1,200 victims and nearly 3,000 cyber attacks. So again, learning from inside the trenches, right? Sharing our information so that we can avoid making the same mistakes and we can all kind of get through this together. So that report is there for you in the handouts tab. Click on the poll, get those last questions in. We are making sure that all the questions get over to the Veeam team. I know things are moving along pretty quickly here, but you will get some answers back on those. So keep those questions coming. While you're doing all of that, I am going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card. Now, a quick reminder that you do need to be here live and present at the MegaCast today in order to win. So our next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Wade Ishishida of California. Wade Ishishida of California. As always, Wade, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Congratulations. And keep in mind, there's that best question gift card from each session. And we're looking at all the questions asked, even if we don't get to them live. So keep those questions coming in, folks. All right. Well, we are going to keep moving along in the MegaCast here. And I am so excited to introduce you all to our next presenter. Genuinely a pleasure because this is a familiar face here with us. And of course, that is Leo Vela, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Now, if you've heard Leo before, you know we're in for a treat. Leo, I'm so happy to welcome you back here to the MegaCast. I know you've got a lot of great stuff to dive into. We want to do some Q&A at the end. So I'm going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Leo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to get to talk to you about how Rubrik can help you detect and recover from a ransomware attack in your environment. My name is Leo Vela. I'm a mid-market inside sales engineer that covers the East Coast. And these are the types of conversations that I have with customers in different organizations on a daily basis. And we have to face the reality that backup does not equal cyber recovery. What I mean by that is Fortune 500 companies, small and medium business organizations, universities of all sizes, despite having backups of their environment, are still being afflicted by ransomware attacks. And why is that? It's simply for a few reasons. Now, all these organizations have invested into security technologies such as next generation firewall, networking security, application security, EDR, XDR, and the list goes on and on. The unfortunate reality is none of those vendors, despite how necessary they are in the environment, are going to stop or claim that they can stop any cyber attack 100% of the time. And of course, the ransomware groups that cause these ransomware attacks in the first place, they take advantage of that, knowing that if they're able to get past your last line of defense, your backups, your data, they have truly found the way to inflict the most amount of pain and guarantee the way that they'd actually get their ransom. The data and the backups are the targets for these groups nowadays. And it's no longer about being able to prevent these types of attacks, but being able to detect and respond. So even though you have backups, how are they still getting afflicted? I should have immutable backups after all, correct? Well, there's a bit more to the architecture that you have to keep in mind than this immutability. So what you see here is probably a diagram of the legacy architecture that many organizations are utilizing today. You most likely have production servers that are connected to a storage area network storage device. And you're running the backup software on proxies, servers, and writing into a separate disk-based array. Now, problems that most organizations aren't aware of is that the fact that this environment is not designed for an adversary behind the firewall, and most definitely not designed for the cloud era and the era of ransomware. So here are a few issues that you definitely have to keep in mind when you're working with such an architecture. That backup repository is most likely utilizing SMB, NFS, either a Windows or Linux file share. And this, unfortunately, is open to the network. Worst case scenario, that network gets compromised. We're essentially talking about an additional attack vector that's prone to those compromises. These are most likely running in a Windows-based operating system, which, as we all know, is the most vulnerable operating system that can be prone to ransomware attacks. Some of these architectures might not even take advantage of multi-factor authentication. You might have to enable encryption at rest and in transit, and it's not something that can be set by default. In fact, it could potentially be something that can be turned off, disabled entirely, leaving you wondering whether or not this is actually zero trust architecture. And lastly, relying on network time protocol servers. They're connecting with the network time protocol servers, and despite many of these vendors having immutability at the storage level, well, what if they were to fast forward time on an NTP server? That can allow for policy-based expiration of your backups that, let's say, you're retaining for a year, but if that time is fast forwarded a year, those backups are gone before you even notice. And not to mention, all these are hosted in the virtual infrastructure. Majority of ransomware attacks these days are carried out at the hypervisor level. So when your backup software is held at the hypervisor level, if you can't restore your backups, it doesn't matter if they're immutable or not, that elongates the amount of time and drastically increases the recovery time objective for your mission critical backups. There are a lot of factors that you have to keep in mind. And while I'm speaking about on-premises, a lot of this same ideology applies to the cloud as well. More and more organizations I'm talking today are either fully mature in the cloud or they're thinking about migrating to AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. And with additional components, you're adding application sprawl. Management is more and more manual these days. And while these cloud providers do in fact have their own native protection platforms, you have to remember you're keeping track of potentially hundreds of virtual machines, different subscriptions, resource groups, security configurations. The most common type of cloud compromise is just a single misconfiguration in the environment. Are you willing to let that up to chance? Now, knowing all of this, the factors that can play into the vulnerability of your backups alone, you have to ask yourself 5 key questions. Do you know if ransomware is in your environment? And if you're able to detect that, do you know how long it's been in your environment? It's very common that these pieces of malware are not going to set off an attack as soon as they get into your infrastructure, but rather bide their time to get the most out of the investment of spending time in your organization so they can encrypt as much as possible. 2, let's say you can determine that you've been hit by a ransomware attack. Might not be too hard at first, seeing as services will stop. But can you determine the blast radius of that attack? Sure, some of your critical services might be noticed more than others, but what about other servers? The malware attached in those servers. Number 3, more and more often, we're seeing that these types of attacks aren't necessarily just a matter of encrypting data, deleting data, but more often an attack we call double extortion. So, on top of encrypting or deleting your data, they'll also exfiltrate that data. And if it turns out that there's PII, HIPAA, any type of sensitive data that might be holding to compliance, that might be valuable to sell in the dark net, well, they're going to try to do exactly that. And the way they'll do it is they'll double the ransom, saying, hey, even if you're able to recover your environment, looks like we got some pretty valuable data on our side. And we're going to publish and sell that in the dark net unless you pay up. So data hygiene surrounding sensitive data is increasingly important. That point about the dormant malware, can you scan your environment for known malware strains? Sure, you most likely have an endpoint detect response tool on production on the front end. But what if it was able to escape that scan? Do you think you'd be able to scan over a timeline of events, perhaps your backups? And let's say best case scenario, you have all of these components, in which I definitely applaud you. But can you test the recovery speeds of all of this environment? And can you prove to your C-levels, the executive board, any other parties of interest, how long it would take to recover from such an attack? And if you can't answer these questions, the last question to ask is, can you afford not to know the answers to these questions? Now, of course, I wouldn't be bringing any of this up if Rubrik didn't have a solution to these types of events. And there's really 3 key pillars that we focus on making sure that we have that track record of being able to help our customers recover from a ransomware attack 100% of the time, focusing on data resilience, the data observability and analytics that we can provide based off of those backups, and of course, the tools to recover as quickly as possible. This is all bundled into our SaaS platform, which we call Rubrik Security Cloud, all built within a zero trust design. We don't trust anyone with the platform, not even the NTP servers. So we take the least amount of risk with your mission critical data. Now, how we do it? Well, it's simple enough. The environment extends to the cloud, whether it be Azure, AWS, GCP. Maybe there are data centers on premises, whether that be your hypervisors, NAS workloads, bare metal servers, and of course, SaaS applications like Microsoft 365. Now we take a proprietary file share, and that is an app and only file share. So once those files are written, they're immutable, can't be deleted, of course, not encrypted over after the fact. Additionally, there's a virtual air gap from that repository, from the rest of your network. We're not communicating via SMB or NFS, but rather through non-routable API calls. So even if your network was compromised, those malicious actors wouldn't be able to detect your backups. Now, for every backup we're taking, we're also indexing each of those backups and using metadata tables and time series of data, which allows us to do really cool things. Now, aside from just the next generation protection, making sure that you don't have to babysit your backups, you have some of the best recovery speeds in the market, we're able to go even further. Now, the real important part of being able to recover from a ransomware attack is answering those questions I had before. So what Rubrik's able to do is utilize encryption detection. So more than just mere anomaly detection, measuring CPU loads, or just change rates, we're able to detect whether or not there's actual encryption activity within your environment, utilizing real world events and known vulnerabilities that we feed our machine learning SaaS application that looks at your backup data. And none of this is done on the production end as to where your servers will suffer from performance issues. We're also able to utilize that backup data for sensitive data discovery. And we have predefined analyzers for CCPA, PII, HIPAA, you name it. And you can also create your own analyzers based on patterns of data that are important to you as an organization, searching for social security numbers, credit card numbers, bank account numbers, you name it. In this way, you're able to practice the proper data hygiene to prevent yourself from being a victim of double extortion. And more importantly, you're going to want to be able to find the dormant pieces of malware inside your environment so you don't reinfect even after recovery. Now, these organizations that carry out these ransomware attacks, they're sophisticated enough to know that you've done a recovery. And if they still have access to your environment, you're still at the risk of re-encryption. With Rubrik, this is no longer an issue. Being able to identify the remote access tools, the malware, all the parts of a ransomware attack, and quarantine those files. So you no longer are at risk of accidentally reintroducing that into your clean environment and making sure that operations continue as expected. Of course, you're going to want to be able to test all of this after all. You'll be able to make recovery plans, group your most mission critical, let's say tier 0 or tier 1 applications that are most important to your organization. And you're able to assess the risk of whether or not those are able to be encrypted. And of course, test how quickly it would be able to fail over from site A to site B, or maybe just utilize isolated cyber recovery. You have a test environment. You're able to use our cyber recovery piece to recover even in the same site. So a ransomware attack will have limited threat to your environment. Now, this is valuable information for any organizational leaders, for your auditors, and yes, even your cyber insurance providers. This altogether is Rubrik Security Cloud. Now, the benefits at this point, they're pretty self-explanatory. Rubrik's able to guarantee the ability to recover data despite you suffering from a ransomware attack. And when it comes to protecting, this can extend to on-premises environments in Azure, AWS, and yes, Microsoft 365 SaaS applications as well. Being able to test this on a regular period to know that your risk is reduced. The proof is in the paper after all. And that data visibility over sensitive data discovery will help you to drive better decision making as an organization. And everything I mentioned, it's all in one platform, Rubrik Security Cloud. Now, I don't need to be the one to tell you that the security industry today is more sprawled than it's ever been. So consolidation is key. And preventing production performance is even more important. So being able to take advantage of all of these analytics and tools from a single platform, that can be repurposed in the existing budget, making sure you're taking advantage of a world-class tool. Of course, you do not have to take my word for it. Rubrik has over 5,000 customers in many different customer verticals. My personal favorite, everything in FinServe, government, security. Take a look at the technology. Apple, Palo Alto Networks, Fortinet, Proofpoint, and Imperva, the IRS, FDA. If these organizations trust Rubrik, imagine what we can do for your organization. So I've already talked a lot about the zero trust architecture, the immutability, the air gapping, multi-factor authentication and single sign-on, IP whitelisting. This all contributes to the secure platform that Rubrik has built for our customers. On top of that, we have an overlay of our support team called the Rapid Recovery Team. That ransomware recovery team is there to help you every step of the way in the case where you are infected by a ransomware attack. We won't leave you hanging as a vendor. We put our money where our mouth is. We know exactly and have the confidence in our organization, our technology to help you restore. We don't expect you to do it alone. This is a world-class support organization. And if you were hit by a ransomware attack, it's as simple as submitting a support ticket. Will be treated as priority one. And this overlay support team, that's their dedication to Rubrik and you as an organization. Rubrik also has something called Rubrik Zero Labs, where we're regularly identifying the trends in the market, whether they be Rubrik or non-Rubrik customers, understanding their experience with security measures. What are they doing with their organization? What's the gap between being able to feel safe in your cybersecurity environment and what's the risk? This way, we're developing the platform exactly the way it should be for your organization. And that's Rubrik. Thank you, everyone. Please feel free to ask more questions into the chat here, and I'll try to answer them as appropriately. Once again, thank you so much for my time, and I hope you have a good day.
Oh, thank you, Leo, for that awesome presentation, as always. And before we jump into those questions that we do have coming into our chat here, I want to make sure that I give everyone in the audience a chance to click on the poll. So what additional information would you like to get about the Rubrik solution? There's obviously lots more to dig into here. So take a second right now, click on that poll, and Rubrik will send you everything that you need right into your email inbox. All right, so while you guys are doing that, Leo, we are going to dive into some of these questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. All right, Leo, how does Rubrik detect malware within the backups?
Yeah. So just referring a little bit back into the presentation, essentially, we're taking intelligence feed, whether that be Yara rules, which are great for detecting zero-day attacks, right? But there's also not a known vulnerabilities when it comes to ransomware attacks. So file hashes and file patterns are also used for detection. And the cool thing about this is we're not scanning a single virtual machine or a single backup at a time. We can scan multiple backups, multiple virtual machines en masse. So that way we can get an understanding of the behavior of that malware over a period of time. So we can understand, hey, it's been in our system for 21 days, which, by the way, is the average time that we typically see malware lay dormant in an infrastructure prior to encrypting. So great question.
Well, the audience clearly all had their coffee today, but also we got a lot of great questions during your session because I think this is a really interesting topic for a lot of people. And Rubrik obviously has a lot going on. And question kind of digging into storage here. So and actually visibility, which always comes up with these types of things, right? So how does Rubrik store my data?
Yeah. And that's always a topic of conversation because we're talking about ransomware protection. So that's a very important part of the conversation. So let's say it's in the context of an on-premises data center, right? So Rubrik does provide an appliance for you. It's hyper-converged to you 4-node appliance where that backup software is hosted on there, as well as acting as the backup repository. Now, it's best practice that you utilize the appliance for local retention, however long you need to have local restores. Typically, that can range from anywhere from 14 days to 45 days, perhaps longer. After that, long-term retention, it's really up to you where you want to store that data. We're very flexible with the archival location. That can be AWS, S3, Azure Blob object store. Maybe you have your own NFS store at a separate location. We also integrate well with that, as well as other S3 compatible providers like Wasabi and Backblaze, to name a couple. Point being, you have that option, and very well you can create that air gap and immutability with those providers as well.
All right, so you were mentioning a lot of this ways that teams can kind of customize and work with this tool. And for a lot of teams out there, there is a lot of legacy infrastructure and existing infrastructure around, especially around security. So we have a question here about the way that Rubrik will actually integrate with some of the existing security tools that an organization might already have.
Yeah, great question. We are a security company after all. It makes sense that we partner with other security vendors. So there are direct integrations that we have with SIEM and other centralized logging report tools. For example, if you utilize Microsoft Sentinel, Palo Alto XSOAR, Splunk, or any SIEM for that matter, we can utilize webhooks. So all the events that are generated by the ransomware monitoring, threat hunting, sensitive data discovery, that would indicate something's happening in your environment, that automatically gets fed into those SIEM tools. In addition to that, just referencing that first question, while we're scanning for indicators of compromise through the backups, this is for your threat intelligence provider, whether it be through an MSSP, maybe you're using an EDR provider like CrowdStrike or Cisco, SentinelOne, to name a few. You can utilize their threat intelligence feed to scan the backups. Of course, they're great at scanning on the front end, but Rubrik will give you that capability of scanning the backups without having to instantiate those virtual machines. So saving a lot of time and resources in that process.
Leo, every time we get to the end of our conversation, I say to you this, and every time I mean it, I wish we had more time to go, but we are going to have to wrap it up. But Leo, if you have a little bit of time, there's still quite a few questions in live chat. And so please feel free to stick around and get some answers. Any questions that don't get answered today in our conversation or in live chat, we'll make sure to get to you, Leo, and to the Rubrik team. And Leo, before you run off and whatever adventure you're off to next, as I know you're traveling right now and joining us remotely as from a hotel, I believe. Leo, if you've got one sort of first step and way that somebody should get started today with Rubrik, what do you recommend as that step?
Yes, the easiest way to get engaged with us is go to the Rubrik website. You should see request a demo in any of our product pages. That way you'll get aligned to your assigned account executive and another solutions engineer. That might be me, might be someone else, but they'll have the perfect conversation with you about your environment, how we can help you, and of course, deep dive into Rubrik and how we can help.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Leo, always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us on your travels, and thanks for all the great information.
Likewise. I really appreciate the time, everyone.
And for everyone out there that answered that poll question, keep those answers coming in. A great way to make sure you get the follow-ups you need from Rubrik. I'm also going to recommend that if you haven't already done so, head on over to the handouts tab. Make sure you get the handout from Rubrik, Exploring Cyber Recovery and How You Can Improve Your Cyber Readiness and Incident Response with Testing and Validated Recovery Plans. So important. So make sure that you have that handout, because you'll want to take a look at that after we wrap today. So while you're clicking on the poll, getting in those last questions for Leo and downloading that handout, I am going to give away another prize. So we have a $300 Amazon gift card, and we have one of those new 15-inch M2 MacBook Airs. So our next $300 Amazon gift card is going to Akash Kumar of Massachusetts. And our next 15-inch M2 MacBook Air is going to Brandy Mouse of Minnesota. All right, well, congratulations to you, Akash and Brandy, and we will be in touch about claiming your prizes after we wrap our webinar. Now, there's still more chances to win, and don't forget about that Best Question gift card coming at you from each session. So even if we don't get to your question live, you are still entered to win. All right. Well, I love when I see all the high fives coming in from the audience congratulating the winners. You guys are such a positive crew out there. I have to say, the questions coming in today are just spectacular. You guys are on fire. So congrats to the audience. High fives to all of you out there. All right. Well, let's keep things moving along in this exciting megacast. And our next chat is going to be another awesome and absolutely info-packed session. I am so happy to introduce you all to Miles Walker, Channel Development Manager at ID Agent. Miles, very happy to welcome you here. I welcome you back to the megacast today. You've been a familiar face here, and I know that we will get a lot out of your presentation. You've got a lot to cover. We want to do some Q&A at the end, so I'm going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Miles.
Thanks, Jess. Got a lot to cover today. Super excited to be here with you and the team. So we're going to be talking about ransomware prevention, blocking, and training. So before I dive in, I want to show you a little bit about myself. You can see my name right up there on the screen. Definitely keep your phone handy on you because there's going to be a lot of slides you might want to remember. You might want to take a photo of, and there's a few QR codes as well. So if you want to scan that QR code, that'll lead you to my LinkedIn profile. A little bit about me. Kind of wanted to make it a little bit more exciting and fun. I know most people just have their name and email, so there's a little bit about myself. Let's dive right in. We've got a lot to cover today. Okay. So in the news, we're talking about ransomware. We're talking about ransomware prevention. We're talking about blocking and training. So this is some recent stories I've seen in the news. Global ransomware attacks at an all-time high, and the U.S. is the primary target. So once again, U.S. businesses, U.S. companies are getting targeted for ransomware. I love to see stuff about this. So the White House announced a national cybersecurity strategy implementation plan. So it's great when governments are realizing that this is important. The 3 or 4 biggest countries in the world that look at cybersecurity strategies and prevention, the U.S., Germany, Holland, and the U.K., and they're all taking this very seriously now. Ransomware attacks shut down hospitals, emergency rooms in several states. This is something we're seeing more and more. When I say we're seeing more and more, cybersecurity companies are seeing that hospitals, emergency rooms, healthcare providers are getting attacked more and more. This used to be a kind of no-go zone for cyber criminals, that and education. And now, since COVID, that's flipped on its head, and now these are rampant and getting attacked all the time. Ransomware attacks on industrial organizations doubled in the past year. So these attacks are here. They're not going away. And if you can believe it, this is the first time ever that small and medium-sized businesses are now getting targeted more than large-scale businesses. And why is that? These cyber criminals are smart, they're sophisticated, and now they're going after that low-hanging fruit. And they realize small and medium-sized businesses don't have the tools that these large-scale businesses have. All right, let's dive into some numbers. I said you might need your camera or your phone. Here's a great example of why you need it. Ransomware accounted for 25% of cybersecurity incidents. This is from a Verizon and IBM report. And once again, almost a quarter of these cybersecurity incidents have some form of ransomware. The number of ransomware attacks is higher in the past 2 years than the previous 5 combined. So once again, they're here. They're not going anywhere. All right, moving along. 5.19 million. If you want your mind to be blown, here's a figure that will blow your mind. This is the average cost of a ransomware attack. This is by the IBM Cost of Data report, and this has increased 13% since 2022. So attacks are going up, the frequency is going up, and now the actual cost of these ransomware attacks is going up. 71%. 71% of companies worldwide were affected by ransomware in 2022. People often ask me, Miles, you're out on the front lines, you're talking with different businesses, you're talking with people in general, and you're talking with cybersecurity experts. What are you hearing? Well, every type of business is being attacked. So I told a story recently at an event I was at where a small little CrossFit gym in Melbourne, Australia was attacked. And lots of people say, well, Miles, I'm not in Melbourne, Australia. I know. But the reason and the why behind this attack is what really baffled me. The cyber criminals put ransomware into the malicious payload in an email that was sent to this CrossFit gym. And what ended up happening? It was an $8,000 ransom. Why? They could have gone after 100 grand, but they know they probably won't get paid. So these cyber criminals, they're getting smarter. they're realizing that, you know what, businesses aren't paying out 100 or 200 grand, but they maybe are paying 10 or 20, or in this instance, $8,000. My property manager, they recently had a cyber attack against their business. And what is so crazy is that these little fish were never attacked in the past, but now these cyber criminals are going after that low-hanging fruit. Moving along. 80% of all ransomware attacks involve a phishing email. So this is something that I always talk about when I'm talking about phishing, or I'm talking about cybersecurity or cybersecurity awareness, that these emails are the cause of most of these ransomware attacks. I don't know if you know, but in the world every day, there's 376 billion emails sent, and that's billion with a B, which means there's a lot of chances for a phishing attack to happen, and that's obviously happening via email. Lastly, the human element. All right. So the human element, you can have the best secure email gateway. You can have the best email solution. You can have the smartest, brightest brains in the world. But at the end of the day, a human will click on a link and make an error. So that is something that we all have to think about. We can have the best solutions available, once again, but if you're not prepared or know what you're looking for, that human element is involved in 75% of ransomware attacks. All right, so obviously I'm talking about ransomware prevention and blocking and training. So when we're talking about blocking and training, email security, you need to have something that blocks out those emails. With 376 billion emails being sent every day, you need someone to help you, or you need a solution to help you. That's where Graphis comes into play. And when we're talking about training, ID Agent is obviously at the forefront of training your users to make smarter decisions, to make sure those emails don't get through to an inbox, and if they do, to know what to look for to block them. So email security, we talked about Graphis. We're an AI-based solution. We like to say the AI is the secret sauce, so to speak. We look at all the different attributes of an email, and I'm going to dive into that in a second. If we're talking about Bullfish ID, which is part of ID Agent, Bullfish ID is a security awareness training and phishing simulation solution. So not only are you going to be learning, and you're going to be learning about security awareness training, but you're also going to be doing simulations to see what actual emails will look like, so that you're prepared when the actual malicious emails do come through. All right, moving right along. So AI-powered email security that stops phishing email attacks that others miss. That's Graphis. We're super proud of all the awards we won this past year. We're one of the most awarded solutions out in the AI-based email security marketplace, and that's something that means so much to us. Obviously, last year, taking home a Cybersecurity Excellence Award, and we were the winner in 2022. That's what the solutions look like. It's clear, it's clean, it's crisp, and it's easy to read, and it's easy to see what the attacks are coming in to your business. So we have 3 layers of protection. The 3 layers: Fish 911, Employee Shield, and Automatic Quarantine. So we look at those suspicious or unwanted emails, those suspicious emails, and then also those malicious emails. The Employee Shield banner is our most visual layer of defense. So that's something you're going to be using on a daily basis. And something so key when you're getting an email based solution to block out the bad threat actors. You want to know that you can actually see an email and say, hey, you know what, this might be phishing. We talked a little bit about Trust Graph earlier. I talked about the secret sauce. So these are the 50 different attributes we look at on every email. So an email comes in, before it actually gets to your inbox, that AI is going to work, and it's figuring out, is this email malicious? Is it suspicious? And then it decides if it's allowed to go through to the final user. That's something so important. A lot of solutions out there don't use AI. They have a rule-based or rule settings, and this likes to protect you before, during, and also after. Automatic quarantine, we briefly talked about that as well. So Graphis automatically detects and quarantines malicious emails. And if needed, it will also notify you. And that is through that Employee Shield banner I mentioned. So the banner will come up on the email, whether it's on the the desktop or the mobile version, and it says report phishing or report a false positive. So you might know that that email is legitimate, and you can report it as a false positive, and then all the other emails like that will come through. So that's good to know. The Trust Graph is our AI-based protection. I mentioned that, and it's a multi-layer approach. So here's the employee shield banners that I mentioned. This is fully customizable as well to the business. So you can change the colors. You can actually even change the message. I like to keep it either the graphics kind of purpley pink or a red color so that when it comes into an employee's inbox or mobile desktop, whatever version it is, they can see that employee shield banner and they know this is something that I have to look at and I proceed with caution. You know, this alerts your user, it empowers your user, and you can analyze that threat. Phish 911 is where we can actually report a suspicious email and send it off to an inbox. So Phish 911 transforms your users into active shield of defense by empowering them to proactively quarantine, as well as simultaneously report suspicious emails and unwanted emails for IT to investigate. So once again, with all those emails coming through, 376 billion, you need some help, and this is where that help kicks in. When you obviously are bringing on a solution, you need to have a solution in place that is easy to use, it's easy to get up and running, and this is where Graphis comes in. So we work via API with Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and it's very simple. So there's no changing of MX records that's big. So obviously installing agents on devices or configuring email filtering rules and policies, as you can see right there. And then the trust graph starts working right away. Usually it takes anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to get your business up and running and to have those emails protected. That's big. So when you're bringing on a new solution, you want to make sure there's not a lot of downtime, that you're protected, and Graphis does that. All right, now we're going to dive into Bullfish ID, which is obviously part of ID Agent. So empower employees to be more secure with effective security awareness training. We talked about phishing simulation. I'm going to dive into that in a little bit. I mentioned as well Cybersecurity Excellence Awards. We took home an award for this as well. So employees, they're more likely to make errors if any of these exist. They don't know what threats look like. That's why training is key. They're experiencing undue stress, distraction, or time constraints. Often the end of the day is the time where these cyber criminals act because people are stressed out or they're finishing the day and they're not thinking about that kind of thing. They don't feel confident judging a threat. That's another big one. They're afraid of the technology. Now with today's hybrid working environment, people often aren't even in the same town, same city, same province, same state, or sometimes even the same country as their IT team. So they can't just, tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, this email looks a little bit fishy. They might also be on a different time zone, of course, as well. So this is something that is so key when we're talking about security awareness training. The fear of job loss or demotion if they make a mistake. They think they'll be judged at asking for help. I am routinely sending emails that I get off to our team and saying, hey, is this legitimate? You know what? People will thank you because you are making sure that there's not going to be a cyber attack. They have little to no security awareness training. They don't have the right tools to stop an incident, or they don't believe security is important. That's a big one. It used to be that people thought, well, we have an IT team that looks after security. But nowadays, they're going after the low-hanging fruit. They're going after HR. They're going after finance. They're going after the contractors. They're going after part-time office managers because they know those could be the weakest link to the business. So why employee security training is essential? Wow, that's a mouthful. The biggest one, reduces risk by experiencing a cyber attack by up to 70%. If somebody came up to your business and said, do you want to reduce your risk by up to 70%, would you do it? The answer is yes. So what I'm getting at is this is one of the main things that you will have. You will have obviously the mental capacity to realize that, hey, you know what? We're going to be better protected now that we have security awareness training. It helps satisfy cyber insurance and compliance requirements. For 2024, we're hearing that if you're not doing some type of security awareness training, the chance of you actually getting cyber insurance is going to go way down, or your premiums will go way up. 1 year of training will reduce the number of employees fooled by phishing by 90%. We're never going to be ever able to, stop this by 100% because these cyber criminals are getting smart, like I mentioned, and they're figuring out ways to trick us. So reducing that cyber risk is important. And lastly, reduces the cost of phishing, like lost productivity and incident response, by more than 50%. All right, moving along. So I talked about phishing campaigns. What we have, obviously, is a rich set of phishing campaigns. They're pre-made phishing simulation kits, and they can get up and running within minutes. and you have the ability to customize these kits and align with the need of your business. Okay, for example, say you're a lawyer, we could obviously tailor that phishing kit or that phishing simulation towards that. You can obviously pick the brand as well. Maybe it's Adobe or Airbnb that you want to use. And new phishing kits are regularly updated. We're adding them, on a very regular basis every quarter. And there's new and interesting stuff that's affecting our world that you can use to deal with your clients. More than just anti-phishing training, we have new training videos and quizzes also updated every quarter as well. Whether it's compliance you want to talk about, or maybe it's security awareness training. Maybe you want to focus just on COVID-19 scams. I mean, that was something that we focused a lot on last year. Brand impersonation is continuing to be a huge issue for businesses across the spectrum. Maybe it's government spoofing. We're seeing that a lot. Ransomware, etc. So there's a lot in there, and you'll be impressed when you see it. Training customization options. I talked about that briefly. So we can customize those phishing campaigns depending on those needs. We can create your own phishing emails as well from a blank template. But I always say, take a look what's out there and you can tweak it. Training course customization. Customize those training courses to once again meet the needs of your business. If you're focusing on a certain industry or working with a certain industry, you can focus your customization towards that. And obviously create and upload your own training content as well. This is what the training portal looks like. The employee experience is great and it's personalized to each end user. User can log in at their convenience to see the assigned trainings, watch video courses, and take quizzes. See what they have to do and what they haven't done yet. And obviously when it's completed, and they can look and see if it's open or expired courses, which are also displayed, which is a big thing. Configure custom domain and improve training deliverability. Bullfish ID allows you to use your own domain or your customer's domain to deliver security awareness training and phishing simulation emails. And of course, users will be less likely to ignore them when they see that. They probably won't delete them or mark as training emails or spam, because these emails will come from a domain that they already trust. I know when I have done our security awareness training, those are the ones that you really have to question, those ones that are coming from a trusted source. Easy campaign management, because at the end of the day, you need to show why you're doing this, to the powers that be. Whether it's running different campaigns for multiple groups, scheduling multiple campaigns for weeks or months end, or targeting a specific area of the business, you can obviously do that as well. And then reporting the value. At the end of the day, everyone has a boss. And you have to show why you're doing security awareness training. And we make this clean and easy to read. So for example, here, 64%, opened that email, and 32 no action was taken. Maybe this one, 36%, 18 open emails. So you can actually go through and actually see who's opening and what they're doing, and if they're giving, their credentials, of course. Once again, I got to pop back to that last slide. You can automate reporting now. That's a big one. Security awareness training best practices. So this is something, after doing all of our research, train on a regular ongoing basis. Aim for monthly training cadence. We say do 11 times per year. And why 11? So that means you keep them guessing. That means one of those months, they're not going to be getting anything. And then they're ready and willing and able and hopefully not clicking on something that's damaging. Train everyone. That's another one. It has to come from the top down. Just because you're the intern or a CEO doesn't mean you're immune to cyber attacks. If we're talking about the CEO, we're often seeing spear phishing or whaling attacks. Whether it's an intern or maybe a part-time worker, they still have an email, which means they're a threat. Train new hires as soon as they start. That is so important. The cyber hygiene and the cyber threats are going to start from day one. So you need to establish that this is a company or a business that takes these things seriously. Identify high-risk employees and take action to mitigate risk. You know what? That's just common sense. And lastly, stagger the phishing exercises. Use phishing kits relevant to your employees' work activities. Don't just send them out in the first of the month. Send them at night. Send them in the morning. Send them in the evening. Stagger that. When we talk about the NIST framework, this is something that I know a lot of businesses use as their playbook. The NIST cybersecurity framework is the most popular framework in the world, most popular in North America and Europe. And this looks at some of our solutions and how they actually fit into the NIST framework. When I say that, whether it's, dark web or bullfish or Graphis, they're all listed there. And you can see that going around from identify, protect, detect, respond, as well as recover. Lastly, we have a 20% off, which is for Graphis email security and or Bullfish ID security awareness training. This is an exclusive offer, so do reach out if you want to learn more. I always say getting on a demo, seeing how the product actually looks and feels, and kind of making your decision from there, because I know moving forward, especially with cyber insurance, you're going to have to do some type of security awareness training. And if you don't have an email-based AI solution or email solution in place, you're probably going to have one in the next 12 to 18 months. So start doing your research now. Jess?
Hey, Miles, I'm back with you. What an awesome presentation and what a cool offer. I love that. And I totally agree with you. Best way to get started, get to know something is to just start working with it, start playing. So I hope folks out there will take advantage of that while they are writing down their next steps and getting that open up in a new tab. Do you want to take some audience questions? Should we get into some of these cues we've got here?
Let's do it.
Got some A's. All right, so I want to start with this one here. I have a secure email gateway. So would Graphis be in addition to that, or is it replacing that?
All right. So secure email gateway. I think we talked about this earlier, or we've talked about it in the past. Secure email gateway. Lots of people call it an SEG for short. And a secure email gateway. They've been around since the early 2000s. They've been a great solution. They blocked a lot of malicious actors from getting into businesses. But to be honest, they haven't evolved like a lot of the solutions that are out there, especially the AI-based solutions out there. So if you have a secure email gateway, that's great. You can keep it. A lot of people, though, are moving away from those. A lot of those are rules-based systems and going to an AI-based solution because they're more robust, and also they're easier to use and easier to onboard. So some people say they use both. That's great. If you have the money to use both, awesome. Otherwise, take a look at an email-based, an anti-phishing email-based solution, and see what some of the differences are for sure.
Awesome. Okay. We actually got a couple of questions about training, and you mentioned that a few times in your presentation. So I just want to dig in a little bit further. This first question here was a question because we do have a bit of an international base out here with us today. So question wondering if the training is going to be available in different languages.
Of course. So we've got English, we've got Spanish, Portuguese. I'm in Canada. We've got French Canadian, which is quite nice. We've also got a lot of our training is subtitled. So if you speak German or Dutch or Italian or Hebrew, we have subtitles as well. But we have, obviously, like I said, English, Spanish, Portuguese, French Canadian.
I thought you were going to say just Canadian translation, just a lot of A's and sorries.
Well, we can do that as well. Maybe that's next time.
Future iterations.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question for you here, actually related to that training, was wondering if you could give a little bit more information about the specific ransomware trainings that you offer.
Sure. Yep. So we've got quite a few out there. We have ransomware basics, which is probably for someone who hasn't dealt with this kind of thing before, and that's volume 2. So we've updated that one. Ransomware in healthcare. We're seeing healthcare attacks. Sadly through the roof. I don't know if you heard recently about the sick kids attack in Toronto, which was against the pediatric hospital there. So we have one about healthcare. We've got a ransomware downloads and attachment one. That one is, everyone should be doing that. Downloads and attachments is how these malicious actors are sending their payload. So to have some training on that. And then we have a ransomware malware, which also includes malicious links and websites. If you don't know how these cyber criminals are doing this with fake websites, you got to learn about this. And links, same thing. They're very good at spoofing, I'll say that.
Yeah, scary how big the threat landscape is, but that's why it's so great when there are tools and available resources for us. Miles, I wish we could keep going with this because we actually have a lot more questions that I'm leaving in the box here. But I'm hoping that what we can do is get those questions on over to you and your team, and you can get some answers back to the folks out there
So everyone out there in the audience, please do keep those questions coming in. Miles, before you leave us though, if somebody is really excited, they're ready to jump in, they want to get rolling with Graphis or ID Agent, what do you recommend as that first step?
Yeah, so reach out. I mean, a demo is easy. They're usually done within 15 to 30 minutes, and they can dive into your business and how the product would relate. Like I said, if they're not doing security awareness training now, they're going to be doing it within a year or two. If they don't have an AI-based email solution now, they're going to be doing it in a year or two. So now is the time to start doing their research and seeing what's out there.
Ooh, that's such a good point. Even if you're not sure that your company is actually ready to jump in, now is the time to be laying that foundation, collecting that information, collecting that data, so that when you need that, and it's when, not an if, you're ready to get going. Miles, I think that's a great place to wrap it up, and I want to thank you again for coming to hang out with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jess. Appreciate it.
All right, and you can see we've got that poll up for you. We're wondering what additional information you would like to get about the ID Agent Graphis solution. So please do take a minute right now and click on that poll. I also want to remind you about the handouts tab. So there is a really cool ebook in there from ID Agent, Ransomware 101. I love the style and the design of this. It's got some really important content. So this is a great handout. Be sure you've got that downloaded and hold on to that after we wrap. Keep those questions coming in because we are making sure that those get over to Miles and the ID Agent team. And while you guys are doing that, I will give away another prize. So we have a $300 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away to someone here live and present with us at the MegaCast. That $300 Amazon gift card is going to Gloria Perez of California. Gloria Perez of California, congratulations to you. We will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap up. Now, there's lots more chances to win a prize today. Plus, we have that best question gift card coming at you from each session. So we will be reviewing all of the questions asked in each one of our sessions, and we will follow up with you after we wrap. But we are going to keep things moving right along in the MegaCast today. Now, I know that this next speaker really needs no introduction because up next, we will be hearing from Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. Roger, I'm so happy to welcome you back to the MegaCast today. I know we've got some great info coming our way from you. As always, I can't wait to get started. So take it away, Roger.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Roger Grimes. Thanks for showing up for the root causes of ransomware and how to defend. I hope to give you some of the most useful information that you've ever been given on ransomware in the next 20 minutes. At least that's my hope. If you haven't met me before, I'm Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for 34 years, earned all of those gray hairs. I've written 13 books and over 1,100 magazine articles, a lot of them on ransomware. My latest book is Ransomware Protection Playbook by Wiley. So this is a topic that I know a lot about and I think about a lot. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest integrated security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor, meaning we help to make you and hopefully your coworkers less likely to be phished and socially engineered. But I want to talk about root causes of ransomware infections because you have to focus on how things are breaking in. Most defenders don't. They're like, oh, I got to stop ransomware, prevent ransomware. You do. But ransomware is really not your problem. It's how ransomware broke in. Ransomware is an outcome of your real problem. How the ransomware got in, how it spread throughout your organization, that is your real problem. Meaning that the way that I like to explain it is that suppose I could wave a magic wand and make all ransomware go away in a second. There's no more ransomware after today. But if you allow bad things to get in the same way that the ransomware got in, social engineering, unpatched software, password guessing, man-in-the-middle attacks, whatever you chose to allow ransomware in, it's going to allow something else to get in if ransomware goes away. Instead of being ransomware to be some type of password stealing Trojan, it would be a Trojan horse backdoor program, key logging program, a hacker. So, recognize that your problem isn't ransomware, it's how the ransomware got in. Focusing on ransomware as the problem is like worrying about your car's brakes after your entire car has been stolen. So you need to focus on the root causes of initial exploitation. And here they are. This is the 10 ways. I've been tracking this and keeping track of this for over 20 years. These are the 9 or 10 ways that any hacker or malware program can break in. If you think of every hacker or malware attack that has ever happened, it's in one of these, I think, 9 categories in this case. Sometimes I'll subdivide it into 10. But it's one of these 10 things, right? This is how the hackers or malware got in. And those things, what breaks in using those methods changes over time. Like, it used to be boot viruses, and it used to be USB viruses, and it used to be email worms. It used to be spam worms and things like that. It used to be crypto mining, things. These days, ransomware is all the rage. Well, what breaks in using those methods changes over time in popularity, but those methods don't change. When people tell me, oh, computer security is changing so fast every day. Well, not the ways that they're breaking into us. Those have pretty much remained relatively consistent for the last 30, 40 years, for the entirety of computer existence. And if you want to use what I call a data-driven defense, which is, hey, use the data of how you're most likely to be broken into and then create defenses that fight those methods, that's it in a nutshell. You have 9 or 10 different ways that any hacker malware program can break into your device, personal or otherwise, or your environment, your network. Figure out what are the most likely methods. Identify the methods of how they could break into your environment. Here, I've got the 9 or 10 right here. You really don't even have to look. But identify the ones that would maybe work. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 that wouldn't work against your environment at all, maybe you don't have any insider attack issues, let's say. Or maybe you don't have any third parties you rely upon. Well, remove those methods out there, but identify the initial exploitation methods that could be used to break into your environment, your devices, then rank them as the ones that are most likely to be used against you currently and in the near future, then implement mitigations against those top root exploitation methods. That's a 3. I've written books, white papers on this. I've got a book, A Data-Driven Computer Defense. I consider my magnum opus. It's 200 pages just to say what's said in those 3 Visio squares right there. It really is this simple. I could say it even in a sentence or so, saying you should fight first and best against the ways that are most likely to be used against you. And that is about as simple, stupid as anybody could ever say anything. You should fight the most likely threats. That literally is the definition of risk mitigation. Computer security defense is all about risk mitigation. The problem is that most computer defenses don't rank the risk appropriately. So this is what I'm telling you to do, is to rank the ways that anything can break into your device or your organization, and ransomware, and again, ransomware methods in this case, and then fight those methods, the most likely to be used against you methods first and best. Now, if you use a data-driven defense, instead of worrying about ransomware, instead of worried about, I don't know, key logging Trojans, instead of being, worried about the outcomes of the problems, I say focus on the root causes that allowed that exploitation. And that's what you should do, is look at what are the most likely impactful exploit root causes, and then you want to put defenses against those root causes against the most likely threats. Again, focus first and best on the ways that are most likely to compromise you. That is what a data-driven defender's approach does. And if you didn't know this, for the entirety of computers, with very few exceptions, for 30, 40 years, the number 1 and number 2 methods for attacking people successfully is social engineering and unpatched software. There have been times when, boot viruses or USB keys or something kind of came in there and interrupted that a little bit. For the entirety, though, of computers, social engineering from the very beginning was used to compromise people, followed by people not patching their software. And let me say, social engineering and unpatched software go back and forth as the number 1 and the number 2, but together they've always been either number 1 or number 2. And social engineering's been like number 1 since like 2009. And maybe one day something will replace these. Maybe it'll be some cloud virus or something like that, or, I don't know, electrical magnetic interference attack or something. But right now, these are and have been for decades the most common ways that people get broken into, including by ransomware. And we even know before, a couple of years ago, a coworker of mine, Javed Malik, actually did a meta study, looked at 100 randomly selected cybersecurity reports that reported on the root causes of exploitation. And all 100 reports said social engineering was the #1 root cause of all hacking and malware. So you don't have to believe me. You can believe 100 unaffiliated vendors that were not working with KnowBe4 and see what they say. I rarely in my entire life have ever come across a cybersecurity study that didn't say that social engineering is the #1 cause of malicious threats. I've actually come across one report, and I'll show you that one report in just a minute, but almost all the others in the entirety for decades have said social engineering is the #1 problem, followed closely by unpatched software. When I did recently look at 6 ransomware reports, so I looked at over 100 ransomware cybersecurity reports, but only 6 out of all over 100, only 6 of them actually gave the exact percentages of the threats that were used. The initial root exploits gave percentages. They all said social engineering, unpatched software, and password issues, and RDP, and all this stuff could be used to break into you. But only 6 of those reports actually gave rankings or percentages. And out of the 6, 5 of the 6 said that social engineering was #1 by far. One, the Codeware report, in 1 or 2 quarters said that RDP, remote desktop protocol, and that could be, a lot of times that's where the attacker already has the password. They bought the password, a valid password from somebody, and they just log on in, or they do some type of password guessing attack. But outside of the Codeware report, every other report in my life has said that social engineering is the #1 cause, including 5 of the 6 ransomware reports. And even if you throw the Codeware report in there, out of all the attacks that you see listed there, social engineering is #1 by far, at least responsible for at least half of all attacks. And then unpatched software is another quarter. RDP, or remote server attack, and password guessing are somewhere in credential theft are kind of around a quarter. Maybe third-party reliances and another thing. The USB one seems to be kind of I can't believe that 7% of ransomware attacks on anybody's report had to do with USB key attacks, but certainly Sophos is, they must have seen instances where it was. But even like I say, credential theft, how do you think the credentials were stolen, right? They can be, they're usually stolen because of social engineering, although they could be stolen because someone compromises the password authentication database and that sort of stuff. But, by far, without a doubt, if you're worried about all hacker and malware attacks, you need to focus on social engineering and unpatched software. If you were looking at ransomware specifically, which is all right to do in today's world because that's what's going to hurt you a lot of times, it's still social engineering, although unpatched software is a little bit lower, maybe replaced by attacks using RDP or password guessing. But this is what we're going to use to form the basis of the recommendations of what you should do to protect yourself, is this particular data set right here. And based on that particular data set, here are the most important critical defenses you could have. And of course, because this is ransomware encrypting your data, you do need to have a good, thorough, complete system tested, offline, up-to-date, backup, and restore. If you're going to have a chance of defeating and not paying the ransom from ransomware, you got to have a good backup. Let me say, most people don't, or maybe they have a good backup, but it's not secure, and the bad guys get to the copies and they delete them, or they haven't tested them to see how long it's going to take to restore that. A lot of people have a really good backup, but then when they go to actually look for that, when they go to do the restore, when they've been hit by ransomware, it shows it's going to take 1,000 years to do the restores. So you want to make sure that you have a good, thorough, secure, complete system, tested, offline, so secure, up-to-date, backup, and restore. That's the bare base of trying. That's not really preventative. That's just for recovery, help you in recovery purposes. Most organizations do not have that, and because of that, a lot of them end up having to pay the ransom extortion. But in most cases of ransomware today, a backup alone is not going to gain you very much because they also do data exfiltration, and they steal credentials and other things. So you need to make sure that you prevent the ransomware from being successful in the first place. You need to stop. You need to concentrate on putting down the initial root causes of exploitation that allows the ransomware to get into your environment, and everything must be secondary to the prevention and also the backup, because if you don't prevent it and it's allowed to go off, there's a good chance you're going to end up paying the ransom or have a lot of downtime. Now, once you figure out what the top root causes are against your organization, most likely to be social engineering, unpatched software, and some password issues, you then want to take the best combination of policies and your technical defenses to be able to put it down. And you always also have to add security awareness training, because no matter how good your policies are, no matter how good your technical defenses are, there's always going to be some amount of maliciousness that gets by those two things. And so you want to make sure that you educate employees to be able to spot maliciousness and to handle it appropriately, which is to report it to IT security, help desk, whatever, or delete it. But you want to create the best defense in depth. That means layered policies, technical controls, and training to prevent bad things from happening against your environment, to have early warning and detection of things that get past your preventative controls, and then have incident response and good, quick recovery to minimize damage for the things that have gotten into your environment. So again, you want to use the best combination of policies, technical controls, and training, and most companies are very weak in the training area to prevent, detect, and recover from hacker and malware attacks and ransomware attacks. So knowing that, for ransomware in particular, you want to focus on mitigating social engineering as the thing you do first and best. And again, that's because the vast majority of ransomware breaks in because of social engineering. You do want to patch your internet accessible software. Last year, there was 18,103 things, or 108 things. It was 18,000, over 18,000. Pieces of software and firmware you're told to patch, but only 2% of those things are ever used in the wild against anybody. So you only really need to patch the stuff that's actually being abused by hackers. And there's reports on the internet telling you which things are being used in the wild or not. But if you don't know, make sure you patch your operating systems, your browsers, your browser add-ins, Microsoft Office. Certainly if you have Microsoft Office, your VPN software, anything that anytime you see a software firmware patching vulnerability that includes that it's being exploited in the wild, you need to patch it aggressively and 100%. And then the stuff that hackers never go after, it's up to you whether you want to patch it or not. But make sure you patch the stuff that's internet accessible, that's likely to be abused by hackers, first and best. Use multi-factor authentication where you can. You will not be able to use it everywhere, so then you want to use good, non-guessable, unique passwords. Where you can't use multi-factor authentication, make sure that every website and service has a different unguessable password. That way, if one of them gets compromised, one password can't be used against you to compromise more of your websites. Also, make sure that you enable account lockout policies in all your login portals and your application programming interfaces if you have any of those, because that's where attackers are going to try to do password guessing. If you don't have account lockout enabled, there's a good chance, if given enough time, that attackers will be successful and take over your account. Also, teach yourself and end users and everyone how to spot rogue URLs. Most social engineering attacks include some type of rogue URL trick to try to trick people to think they're going to some trusted brand like Microsoft or Twitter or something like that. If you want to, I've got 2 links there. The first one is an article where I show the 12 most common rogue URL tricks, and the second link there is a 1-hour webinar where I give like 50 examples of the most common URL tricks used by attackers. Also, everyone wants to use least permissive permissions. That means don't be logged in as admin or root all the time, especially when you're picking up email or surfing the web, because that's just asking for trouble. And if you have file shares and things anywhere, you want to make sure they're least privileged, that the people that are accessing those things have the least permissions that are needed for them to perform their task. Remember, trying to prevent phishing social engineering is the best thing you can do. I have a webinar that talks about it's like 100 slides, talks about every single thing that's in my brain that can tell you how to prevent phishing and social engineering attacks. If you don't like to watch 1-hour webinars of me talking, you can read my 49-page ebook. And again, it's everything that I and KnowBe4 can think of to prevent phishing. It's every policy, technical defense, and education best practice that I and KnowBe4 can think of to make your organization and people less likely to be phished. We even are big fans of this Give Red Flags training, social engineering red flags. This is a PDF. If you go to that link below, it's an article where you can download that PDF, or you can email me at rogerg@know-before.com and ask for my PDF posters. But here's one that talks about the 22 most common signs that that somebody should understand that an email is a phishing email. Things like the from is a wrong address, or the from address and the where you'd reply to are different, or the friendly name is different than the from address, or it arrives at strange time at night, or it contains a malicious file attachment, or has a rogue-looking link. Again, this is a good PDF that you can download, print, and send and use with anybody. You even have kind of the 12 red flags of rogue URLs that come out of my article and talk that I just talked about. But these are the most common tricks that malware writers and phishers and spammers use to trick you into clicking on something that you shouldn't click. So you can go to that link at the bottom of your page, or you can email me again, roger@knowbefore.com. I'll send you those PDFs. And we even have lots of good resources just in particular to fight ransomware. We have a whole portal dedicated to ransomware. We have a ransomware hostage rescue manual guide that has most of I helped redo the 2020 edition, which still applies in 2021 and later. That talks about all the things you should be doing to prevent, detect, and recover from ransomware. We even have a really cool ransomware simulator we call Ransim. If you download this, it tries to simulate over a dozen commonware ransomware programs. It's not really ransomware, but it simulates them, and your antivirus and endpoint detection removal system should not allow these things to run, but you'll find out. Some people will tell me, I downloaded it and it didn't work because it allowed all 21 to run. And I have other people that go, hey, it blocked it. You can use our ransomware simulator to find out which programs your endpoint detection programs will detect and prevent. It's a really good, quick test to find out how well protected you are. Most people find out that there's a lot of ransomware programs that wouldn't have been blocked. At KnowBefore, of course, we're big believers in that you should provide training to all of your employees, longer training when they're first hired, and then annually every year, maybe 15, 30, 45 minutes. Then every month they get some small training, maybe 1 to 3 minutes, and then you do simulated phishing tests every month to see how well they took the training. And when people fail the simulated phishing test, they get more training. That way, the people that need more training get more training. We know this works because our average customer that comes to us has about over 30% of their end users will click on a normal looking phishing email that you and I think we would never click on, but they do click on it. But after you do the training and simulated phishing and training where needed, you can get the average percentage of people that will click on a phishing email in your organization below 5%. This isn't our best customers. This is all of our customers that follow just what I said, which is to do annual and monthly training and simulated phishing and giving more training to people that fail the phishing. It really does work. There's no other thing you can do to prevent hacking and malware and ransomware attacks than to fight social engineering using security awareness training. Again, I'm Roger Grimes. You can email me. I'll respond to you within 24 hours. You can send me an email at rogerg@knowbefore.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I appreciate you putting up with me in my fast 20-minute talk today. And good luck, and continue to fight the good fight.
Thanks, Roger. Really appreciate that. And another great way to get in touch with KnowBefore is to click on the poll that you see on your screen right here. What additional information would you like to get about the KnowBefore solution? So take a minute right now and click on that poll. I will also remind you to head on over to the handouts tab. Now, Roger was just talking about that Ransom. It's a download that will basically run, little fake attacks and give you an idea of how vulnerable your network is against those ransomware and crypto mining attacks. So this is an absolutely fantastic place to start if you're exploring how much your organization needs to be thinking about this with that visibility. So click on that link in the handouts tab and get that Ransom download and start learning, see where you're at. While you guys are clicking on the poll, downloading that handout, I am going to give away a prize. We have up next a $300 Amazon gift card as well as a 15-inch M2 MacBook Air. So our $300 Amazon gift card going to someone awesome and live here present with us at the MegaCast is Sarah Redman of Indiana. Sarah Redman of Indiana, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. And another live awesome human here at the MegaCast, getting a 15-inch M2 MacBook Air, is Adam Day of Virginia. Adam Day of Virginia, congratulations to you both. As always, we'll follow up with you folks after we wrap the webinar today. Now, more chances to win coming up, and the person who will be giving those prizes away later today is Scott Becker, who is here joining me. Welcome to the MegaCast, Scott.
Hey, thanks, Jess. Yeah, fascinating information so far. So many details on attacks that I hadn't heard about, with lots of great best practices and other tips and tricks. Great show.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of one of those, you get a little bit more scared, and then there's all sorts of fun solutions around it. So it's been a roller coaster, Scott.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, you've earned a break from all this. Thanks, Jess. And I will take things over from here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close down that poll. Thanks to everybody who's responded to that one. And we're going to take a short break from the sessions today because we want to hear from you. So we're developing our 2024 webinar schedule, and it's, more events like this one. And we want to keep bringing you the best events in the industry. So we want to know, what topics do you want to see us cover in 2024? And if you could just post them there in the questions tab. I'll tell you right off, that some of the things that we're focused on for 2024 are, AI, of course. There's so much energy around generative AI, and so, like, what's on your mind around AI? Are there angles on it that you'd like to see us develop events around? And then, ransomware events like this one today, sadly, we're sure those are going to continue to be a topic next year. But, is there a spin on ransomware that you'd like to see in an event? Something that would really help you. We'd love to hear your thoughts there in the questions console. Security more broadly, obviously we're going to focus on that too, but are there subcategories within security that are really on your radar and you'd love to get more information about? We're always looking at cloud, of course, but what's on your mind around cloud? Is it multi-cloud management? Is it cost control in the cloud? Is it cloud security? What do you want to know more about? And of course, those are just some of the things that we're thinking about. We've already gotten a couple of responses in here. Pam is talking about API and UI development. Thanks, Pam. And Gilbert, AI right-sizing implications and threat vectors. Awesome. Great stuff rolling in here. And, so just whatever's on your priority list for the next 18 months, when you think about those top priorities, what are those? And, let us know so we can help you out with events like these that give you sort of short lists of vendors and expose you to solutions that you might not have thought about. All right. Well, we really appreciate these answers that are rolling in. And I want to encourage you, don't just stop when this segment here is over and we move on. If something occurs to you throughout this event, just go ahead and drop that in there. These really help us, to bring you events that will bring value to you next year. We really want to, tailor our events to what you need to hear about. Okay. So now it's time for the next presentation in this Ransomware MegaCast. And this session comes from Metallic, and presenting for Metallic, we have Steve Preston, who's Vice President of Metallic Security. So I'm going to turn things over to Steve.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining this session. My name's Steve Preston. I'm the Vice President of Security Services at Commvault, and today I want to talk about defending data from sophisticated threats and doing it sooner. I think there's a good story I like to open up with. It has to do with a CISO I just met with, a CISO of a large enterprise. And of course, we're talking about business drivers. Ransomware came up almost immediately as a board level concern. But before we got into solutioning it, she pointed out right away and set the record straight that she had to understand where the data was. And then she went on to explain where she thinks the data was in her environment. And she described a hybrid environment, multiple clouds, on-premise, and so forth. The reason I bring that up is it's so typical, right? I think it's over 90% of enterprises have data in a hybrid environment. not to mention manufacturing, research labs, healthcare organizations that not only have their data in a hybrid IT environment, but they also mix in OT technology like manufacturing technology or critical infrastructure or medical devices or lab equipment in a converged network. That's important, right? It's all data, it's all an attack surface, and it's all fair play for ransomware. So when we think about the attack landscape, and we think about attacker techniques and what they're doing, they're going into these environments through the most vulnerable ports, if you will, and they assume that you have the ability to recover your data. And so they're going after your backup infrastructure early, and they're moving very, very quickly. Look, time is not on their side either. So time is of the essence on the attacker side and on the defender side. So we're finding more and more metrics that support the fact that attackers are getting faster and faster and more stealth. Breakout time is one of them. So breakout time, CrowdStrike keeps that metric as the time between the entry point when an attacker gets in the environment and the time they achieve lateral movement. And that's when it's kind of game over, when they can move about in the network with impunity, if you will. So that time continues to shrink. And you have to know that the first thing they're going to do likely is take away your ability to recover your data. So that kind of makes this notion of production environment, backup environment being separated kind of obsolete, because impact happens on everything all at once. So think about a modern ransomware attack is encryption, exfiltration, distributed denial of service attack. So really, when you think about your responsibility to protect the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of your systems and data, all that gets hit all at once. So that brings these two ends together. So it's not about just moving left. It's about thinking about the problem as a holistic problem in your environment, which includes the production environment and the backup environment all at once. Because frankly, the attackers don't care about production environment and backup environment and how you're organized as your IT organization. They want to get to the crown jewels. They want to gain as much leverage as they can, which means they're going to take over your network. They're going to take your data, they're going to exfiltrate the sensitive stuff, but they'll have control over your network, because at the end of the day, a ransomware attack is an advanced persistent threat that's made generally available. These advanced techniques are made generally available as a service through ransomware as a service. So when you think about how you're going to defend against that, you hear a lot of talk about resilience, and that's important. The ability to fight through an attack versus prevention and try to stop plug every hole in your environment. How do you fight through the attack? Well, first, know where your data is, know where your most precious data is, know whether or not it's out of bounds. In other words, in an asset that isn't protected and delivering the SLAs and the protection that's required for that data. So that takes the ability that requires you to have the ability to discover data, classify it, understand the risk associated with it, and be assured that the information isn't exposing you to risk and isn't in an environment where it shouldn't be. You have to know, not just have zero trust architecture and zero trust principles, but you have to have the ability to audit against that and to ensure and to see to monitor your security posture in your environment to be sure that these principles, zero trust principles, are being enforced in your environment. You have to make sure your data is secure and trusted. That requires immutability. And like I said, the ability to identify information risk and manage it. You have to anticipate threats early. And by early, we mean, within 72 minutes or so, within 90 minutes, identify that and protect the data, protect your backup environment before an attack starts to unfold. And then if you should get hit, you have to have the ability to recover. And that could mean a lot, because encryption algorithms are incredibly fast and they're incredibly lightweight. Some of them will encrypt 100,000 files a minute. I've done the math. That gets to be around 19 terabytes a day. And that adds up, particularly if you cast that across a 9-day dwell time. So you need to have the ability to recover at scale across that hybrid environment and do it quickly and do it with confidence, knowing that you're not reinfecting the environment with malware that could be in your backup environment. So you have to have the ability to scan your backup environment and trust the data to assure that you have a clean backup. But let's focus for a minute on early warning and what that means to protecting data. The reason early warning is important because attackers get to the crown jewels very quickly. And they get to enjoy more time in your network. So that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Number one, the ransomware attack in itself unfolds in less than 4 minutes. 4 hours, but they have actually 9 days in the environment to plan their attack. So that's a lot of free time to gain control over your network. And what's interesting is dwell time. By the way, dwell time is the time between an attack, when an attacker gets in and the time that they're caught. For ransomware, dwell time's gone up. Now, generally speaking, for cyber attacks, dwell time has gone down because we have better tooling, we have better instrumentation, better detection technology, but not true for ransomware. It used to, we used to believe, I think, and rightly so, that ransomware is noisy. And that's why dwell time was relatively short compared to double-digit days of, dwell time. It's actually gone up because their techniques are stealthier, and the encryption itself is stealthier. So the next stat is related to the first stat. Attackers are getting into the network, getting a foothold, and moving around freely without writing any malware. So they're really issuing a huge challenge for tools that collect data on endpoints and collect evidence to try to discern what's going on, because they're leaving no evidence behind. And like I said, the attacks look more and more like advanced persistent threats, which means that by the time a ransom note comes across someone's desktop, it's very likely that they've exfiltrated the data, they've taken down your ability to recover the data, they have control of your network, and not only will they leak the data to extort you, but potentially hit you with a distributed denial of service attack if you don't comply. Again, they're looking for all the leverage they can get. So this brings us to early warning. There is that window, right? It's really about a 71-minute window, call it, that an attack, when an attacker's in your environment, they're getting a lay of the land. They're discovering and planning their attack. That's when you need to spot them and see it and defend data sooner. Spot alerts sooner. But that requires you to uncover some of these stealth attacks, because those are the techniques they're using. One of those techniques is coined LOL bins. So an LOL bin is living off the land binary. So these are binaries that come with the operating system, Microsoft Windows, for example, and they're built in intentionally to run the operating system. So one example is run DLL32. Run DLL32 is used to run DLLs. You need dynamic link libraries to run Windows. You can't run Windows without them. So what's happening is attackers know that, and they're using these tools to get information that they need. So for example, run DLL could be used on comm services DLL. And you can run a script that'll dump privileged credentials that you can use in an attack. There's nothing illegal about it. So an attacker, you can see in this screenshot, is running run DLL on a different DLL, shell 32, but they're running a DLL. And the endpoint protection tool, all of them, frankly, they collect the data, but they don't alert on them. You can't alert on LOL bins. Print.exe is an LOL bin. Explorer.exe is an LOL bin. Can you imagine alerting on those at every endpoint? You would be overwhelmed with false positives. So it's a real challenge for these kinds of tools, but not for us, because what we do is we introduce fakes into the environment. What we mean by that is, rather than collecting data on real endpoints, we introduce fake endpoints into the environment, fake servers, fake desktops, fake printers, cameras, routers, switches, websites, you name it. They're not real. real people, right? Legitimate people, legitimate systems that belong in your environment. Can't see them, don't interact with them. They can only be seen and interacted with by bad actors who are skulking around in your network trying to cause damage. And we do this now. You might hear honeypots. These are honeypots. Well, in a way they are, right? We are using deception, but honeypots have been around for a long, long time. We take this concept and we've made it very modern. And the way we've done that is rather than putting a real fake asset in, what we do is we deploy a virtual appliance through our hosted command control plane. We call it the ThreatWise Security Operations Console. We deploy these fake, we deploy appliances in your network, and we configure services like a Windows, say Windows 2000 R12 server. We'd configure that service. It has an IP address, it has a MAC address, it could be discovered, you can log into it, you can interact with it, but it's not a real server. Think of it as a microservice, but it's native. What's cool about this, you're not consuming a license, you're not consuming compute or storage, it's an emulation of a real server. And it scales like crazy. And it'll work in every kind of network and every kind of environment. So if you're in manufacturing, you could emulate a manufacturing control system and so on and so forth, as well as a server or an endpoint. Anything with an IP address. Now, what we've done around this is our core. What we've done is we've enhanced it with some really interesting capability. One is we do allow you to create a full system through the same platform. And that would be a virtualized full system. And what we'll also do is allow the sensors to proxy to them. So let's say in a network segment, we could add 50 fake assets. 49 of them would be sensors, and one of them would be a full system. They work together. So it actually makes 50 discoverable assets that have the interaction of a full system. So this gives you the ability to scale. So now you have 50 fake assets in that segment. Now for the other assets in that segment, there might be 200 other assets in that segment, let's say. You can add these things called lures. These are artifacts. So think files with links, cache credentials, bookmarks, and so forth that lead you to these sensors. So with these three tools, we create a fabric, a deceptive fabric in your network around your production assets and your backup infrastructure, your media servers and so forth, to give you early warning and also buy you time, right? Because while an actor is playing with these things, they're not attacking a real asset. And these behave very differently because if you interact with one of these things, this is an alert. So while you're playing with this fake server, let's say, in this case, it is a Windows server, I believe. Yep, it's a Microsoft 2012 R2, right? So it's this fake server. This is the actor. This is their IP address. This is their MAC address. This is where they're coming from. And here's a timeline of everything they've been doing during this interaction, including the run DLL 32, but also including when they connected to that asset. So they're in the network at some point during this time of day, in this date. This not only gives you insight that you can hunt on, because now you know the technique, now you know the whereabouts of the attacker. You can pivot on that and look and find where the IP address 1.145 is lurking around trying to run these commands on real assets, and you can contain it. You also get the timeline where you can get your recovery point in that segment of any other asset that might be affected by this malicious event. Okay, this brings us to the data integration. This is a really powerful new feature that we have, that we combine this power of knowing the data environment with the backup and recovery environment, and the ability to create a fake environment around it to give you early warning. What we do is when we scan a network segment, right, and we find an asset that we're going to back up and we classify it, we also get all the information about that asset, how it's configured, and so on and so forth. And that gives us a template, and based on the value of the asset, we deliver recommendations to the deception console. The deception console now has everything they need to deploy not only the clones, but the number of clones recommended by ThreatWise Advisor. So that sends advice and say, please deploy these, and then you deploy them. So that makes deployment very scalable and very easy for security. It also makes alerts relevant to not just the security operations, but to backup operations, meaning that if any fake asset, right, decoy, gets hit in that segment, any asset that's like it you'll get alerted on. So this will start a run book for not just for security operations to contain this incident, but for data protection to stop aging, stop deletion, and stop manipulation of the backups during that time. Because remember, time is of the essence. So in short, that's how it's integrated. And we also, we obviously integrate with SIM and with SOAR. So we push this information into your environment. And this is what we hunt on. But we also give you the ability to visualize where these attacks from, because an attacker might move from one IP address to the next. And then you can drill down into those incidents and visualize it. So I hope that provided a good overview of what this kind of capability is. It's not only just discovering data, classifying data, making sure that data is protected, that it's stored in a safe, immutable place, to make sure your backup environment is secure, the ability to audit it, the ability to recover at scale and not reinfect your environment, but also integrate early warning so you can see threats early and protect your environment before a single line of encrypted code gets written. So thank you for your time. If you'd like more information, obviously visit our website at www.commvault.com. You can look at our solutions section in cybersecurity and see more detail. If you're really interested in ThreatWise, obviously you can go to our ThreatWise page on our product section of the website.
All right, and we do have a poll question for you. We appreciate your feedback on any additional resources that you'd like to see from Metallic. And it looks like we had a lot of questions that we can't get to right here, but Steve Preston and the Metallic team will do their best to respond to all these questions. While you're answering that poll, I'd also like to remind all of you about the handouts section. We've got a PDF data sheet there from Metallic's parent company, Commvault, about early warning cyber detection. So be sure to check that out if you'd like more detail. And that was just such an interesting solution with the fake assets and the decoys. That's so smart. Really enjoyed that presentation. Okay, well, thanks to everybody who's responded to the poll. We do appreciate your feedback, and I'll leave that up here for another few moments, and then we'll move on to our next presentation. And again, I just want to thank Steve and Metallic for bringing us up to speed there on what they're doing. Okay, let's go ahead and close down that poll and go to our next prize drawing. And this one is a $300 Amazon gift card, which we're giving away all day. This one goes to David Seaton from Michigan. So congratulations to David Seaton. We'll be in touch about claiming your prize. All right, and now it's time for our next to last presentation in the Ransomware Best Practices Megacast. This session comes from Recovery Point and Pure Storage together. So presenting for Recovery Point is Vince Wood, who's a cloud engineer. And for Pure Storage, we have Ian Wheat, who's a technical advisor. So thanks to both of you for being here. We'll turn things over to you.
Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. This is a quote that I've heard many times. And the one thing that I want to make sure that we kick this presentation off with is that this is a lesson that not only applies to life, but IT as well. So we're going to dive into that. And I know that was kind of an abrupt introduction, but there's a reason for it. So bear with me. So wait a second. Who are these people? Ian, you know either of these guys on the screen?
No, they seem like a rogues gallery. Maybe this is post office photos.
I'm noticing a theme between the two photos there. I think you and I had talked about that. There might have been the strategy behind that, maybe.
Great gray shirts, red hair. Right, it's a great strategy.
So if you've been working in IT for a while, there's a common set of methodologies that are used when it comes to data protection and business resilience and business continuity. I'll insert all the words. There's a common set of methods used: backups, replicas, offsite copies. We'll go into a lot of that later. But I think the key that we're going to drive home here, and tell me if you think I'm wrong or want to change this in any way, but those are not enough. I think that's what we're driving home today.
Yeah, it's that can be your strategy, your plan on a technical level, but there's a number of human factors involved as well. Obviously, we're dealing with environments managed by people, and we're dealing with applications interacted with by people, and evolving environments. And I think that's one of the key things we're looking to discuss today.
And also, in addition to that, what have we seen that works and doesn't work, and what should you probably consider when you go down this rabbit hole? And I'm sure during this megacast, there's been lots of advice given. The numbers on this screen here, I'm sure anyone that's in our space, Ian, has seen these numbers in some form or another from different vendors, probably with different word and verbiage attached. The shorthand has grown since I first saw it. There's a few extra numbers that have been added. And we're going to let you Google those. We're not going to spend a lot of time on what those numbers are. But just know that Recovery Point, Pure Storage, and many others, we've taken it a little bit further. And one method to increase the madness or the effect of the madness would be immutability. Or put another way, Ian, how would you describe that?
Yeah, it's not just how many copies you're making and where they are. It also matters what they're stored on. So when you're copying your data, it matters. Everybody saw the kind of the newer number added in the 321 or 3210 there is the air-gapped copy, right? Well, in addition to that, you need to think about in each of the places you're putting your data, is it going on a storage platform that has the right capabilities? Can it recover quickly from the environments I need to recover quickly from? Am I working with a warm restore from one tier and cold archive in another? Do I have that quick restore from that warm tier that meets my actual SLAs to the business of being able to restore quickly? And then is it a platform that's economically viable and environmentally friendly? The biggest change in the last couple of years, and the change that I think we're going to see really hit hard in the next 4 to 5 years, is Flash being a default media type. And that means greener. And that means, great, more people in my company are going to be happy with me for changing out storage platforms and putting something more resilient and reliable in. But the point you're starting to hit there, Vince, is the data, once it's stored, has to be untamper-proof, child-proof. Like the windows in my car, when I can't roll them up and down because I hit the child lock, that's really what you need. And it's one thing to say I've stored a copy of data that's immutable, but I really need to make sure that there's a permissions gap, right? That I've got extra controls around who can and cannot destroy snapshots, clones, copies. That's one of the things at Pure Storage that we've really doubled down on, is we call it safe mode. There's additional hoops you got to jump through, and they're configurable, customizable, requires more approvals. And that's the kind of thing where we get back to that human factor, and you've got to be able to put more controls around these things. But that's just one part of it. Vince, what's the where do we need to start?
Well, I started this conversation with a quote we've all heard: fail to prepare, prepare to fail. That I can't stress it enough. You gotta prepare, and there's lots of ways to go about that. I have my own opinions on them. I'm sure you do as well. But that's where we need to focus our efforts, because in a lot of cases, we will recover from an incident or an attack, or whatever word you want to use. You'll recover. It may not be to the completeness that the business or organization necessarily wants, or it may be 100% successful, and you just have to tweak some things to make it better. But it all starts with preparation. And that's what we're talking about. One thing that I can't stress enough when it comes to preparation is that you really can't do it alone. Here you and I are talking about the relationship between Recovery Point systems and providing that level of service and support and collaboration, but we can't do it without Pure Storage and your help. we all have a role to play in this larger objective. And in doing that, there's a whole series of steps that we need to work through, so to speak, or think about in order to work through them. Anything stand out here before I move on, Ian?
I think the thing that's key is expertise consulting. Knowing that you've got the talent and experience in-house, out-of-house, through your partner like Recovery Point. That's why we work together, because Recovery Point has more people who have dealt with this stuff, with dealing with ransomware events, with recovery, day-to-day recovery operations even. I tell my customers a lot, I help you architect and design data platform for storing and recovering, but I haven't been hands-on doing recoveries other than maybe in a lab for years. But my friends at Recovery Point, they do it all the time. So it's that expertise that brings in asking the right questions in the preparation step to make everything goes more smoothly when something bad happens.
And we talk about our Recovery Point doing this all the time. One of the things we stress to all of our customers, and we'll tell this to prospective customers, man, words are hard. Future business partners, another way to put it, is iterative testing, making sure that you work through the process. You've got basically two goals here. One is to make sure you know the process, know how you're going to recover, what steps are you going to take, drill it until it's instinct. The other point is to find your gaps. The other objective is to find where you're lacking or how you can improve. So as the slide shows, that you reduce the amount of time and the amount of risk as you iterate through this process. It's been said that a DR test, a backup, a replication point, whatever words you want to use, those are point in time snapshots. Those are, okay, as of DR test number 2 on this particular slide, we've reduced our risk from A down to B. Over time, that continues to grow, and you want to keep iterating and reducing that risk over time. Ian, do you have anything to add on that part?
Yeah, the risk grows over time, right? Between those tests. The thing that is also key, I think, in keeping that drift to a minimum is, we talk about like our RPOs and RTOs, right? How when I do recover, how far back in time, how much current data or current operations have I lost because my last copy was 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 6 hours ago, and the cost therein. But also at a broader scale, right? What you're describing here is that I tested 6 months ago. Well, a lot has changed. Maybe not just in the what data exists, but also in what does my environment look like, right? Have more applications been brought into this environment? Have applications grown? Did the automatic mechanisms of my data protection software grasp that I added a workload, that I added volumes, that I added applications, and automatically protect them? If so, great. Do I have that? Is that now documented somewhere? So the flip side to expertise is you've got to have tools that help. There's all kinds of great ways to manage that too, but just a couple of good examples are we actually have this thing we call VM analytics in our SaaS-based management portal. We can show customers from the storage layer all the way to the VM layer. What does the topology look like between the two? You can take a screenshot of it. You can export it as a PDF or a spreadsheet, save that somewhere secure, print it out, post it on your wall. You have a copy of that environment details. Now, it's also a point in time, but when you set yourself up with more frequent testing, then you're going to be able to say, yeah, you know what, I'm not drifting. And the other thing that tool does as well is it'll even say, hey, these volumes are not compliant with that 32110 strategy, right? This is being copied one time, not 3 times, or it's being copied not frequently enough, or it doesn't have an air-gapped copy. And so that, again, helps you reduce this drift of configurations, because that's really, that's about fixing your processes.
And it's not just a matter of fixing the process or the technologies. You also need to keep in mind your people. I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with an organization where we iterate through a process, whatever that may be, and halfway through iteration 4, 2 of the team members find a new job, and they take with them some intimate knowledge of the process. So helping to make sure that the entire team has the information necessary for them to succeed is key and core. So we learned through iteration of DR testing what we need to do, how we need to do it. We created documentation, blah, blah, blah. What did we learn along the way? There's a lot of factors that go into one's ransomware recovery plan or incident recovery plan. There's, when you develop the process, there may be certain protections in place, certain mechanisms in place, things like that. And that may change. Or you may get an attacker that gets into your environment without you even knowing, and they're sitting there in your environment doing things that are specifically thwarting protections you have in place. I don't know what statistics. I think there's a statistic somewhere in this information for us that talks about frequency and dwell time and whatnot. But that is a factor. It is something that needs to be taken into consideration when you're talking about business needs, demands, protection, all those kind of things. Ian, you and I talk about RTO and RPO regularly. It's a topic that comes up. Time sensitivity is something that comes up.
And the interesting thing is, can you detect or can you find that malware or that bad actor who's in your environment during their dwell time, right before they push the big red button that ruins your day or your month? One of the interesting things that's changed in the data platform layers, right, is we've become so accustomed to data reduction. So we're all about, I want more economical storage options. So, hey, every bit of data we store gets deduplicated, compressed. We do it, dedupe, compress it, encrypt it at rest, and more. And then, again, reiterating that marriage of people and process and experience with automation in order to help them make it easier. If that reduction ratio drops precipitously or suddenly, if it goes from, hey, you're getting this 5 to 1, oh, hey, we're getting 2 to 1 today out of nowhere on a production system, on a production volume, you're going to get a big flashing alert that says, hey, reduction hit just went to nothing. And it's probably because somebody's encrypting data, because somebody's been in the environment and they're messing with your stuff. So, that's how you have to start reducing all the angles, right? Reducing here, reducing there, reduce the threat here, reduce the threat there, and it pulls together to hopefully minimize risk overall.
And then once you've mitigated risk or found the attacker, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, a core component is going to be communication, making sure that everyone on your team knows where you're at, where you're going, what's the status, and try implementing what a friend of mine calls constant contact. I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it's just a great idea that he shared with me at one point in time, and that is frequent updates. Even if the update only has changed by 2 words, every whatever interval, 15 minutes, hour, day, depends on what the incident is and how you're working through it. But, hey, Ian, we're working through an incident. We'll let you know if we need you. You now know to act potentially. You don't know that it's when it's going to act, but you're going to need to do something. And then every so often that, hey, Ian, we'll still need you, but we're not sure when yet. Hey, boom, boom, boom. Just keeping that communication going, because let's say that you're successful in recovery. Now what? You're moving from the incident, you're moving into, post-incident activities. Many that are much smarter than me have said that it's okay to fail as long as you learn from your failures. Well, it's also okay to succeed, learn from them, keep moving forward. Here's that statistic we were talking about, Ian. The global average cost of a ransomware attack in 2022, so this is a little bit dated, but hey, we're working with what we got here, $4.54 million. How many pure flash arrays would that buy, Ian?
Hopefully you only have to buy, 1 or 2, not spend that full $4.5 million. But if you can avoid that cost, or even just cut it in half, isn't that worth doing, right?
That's a substantial savings.
It is, and I think that the way that you get there, we're talking about you've been through hell, you've been through a bad event here. One of the best ways to learn is analysis, right? That's what you're describing there. It's often called the forensics stage. I'm seeing so many customers or providers like Recovery Point doing clean rooms or bunkers, right? Where that last copy of data, that last archive copy maybe, or the air-gapped copy is in an environment where there's standby compute resources and networking, or they have, we've agreed, hey, within 48 hours of an event, I need to have new environments stood up so that I can examine what happened to this data. Because, I can say, I've got my clean data, I'm restoring it. I need to look at my corrupted data too and figure out what happened. And those there has to be a nice separation between those environments, because one is your new production and it has got to be safe and secure to keep business running, to keep that 4.5 million down or to zero. And then you've got to look at the analysis and say, this is a safe place for me to poke at that corrupted data to see if there's any signatures or footprints leading me back to attackers or to the way that they got in, so that I can document them and close them off.
So we've worked through an incident, we've recovered, maybe we haven't, maybe we've partially recovered. The key next step is going to be gap analysis. And that's making sure that whatever lessons you've learned, whatever gaps you've found, that you address them in the future. You don't have to be 100% successful every single time, but an A or a B is still a win. 80 to 90% is still a win. If you have to redo a little bit of work, that sucks. But guess what? You'll live. We're running a little bit low on time here, so I want to skip through a few things, but I do want to make sure that I hammer home this next point, and that is reviewing your DR test or recovery results. This is one thing that teams that I work with, I see do this regularly, and that is 1 to 2 days after an incident, an issue, a support request, whatever it may be, 1 to 2 days later, schedule a short safe space window. Hey, Ian, we worked through this problem. The flash array threw a failure on, controller B. What did we do right, wrong? How can we improve in the future? Walk through it all, take those notes, and then go do something about it. Come back in 1 to 2 weeks and evaluate. Did we take appropriate, effective actions? Are we setting ourselves up for success moving forward so we don't come back to this and repeat it?
Yeah, I think it's important to do that while the memory's fresh too. You need to have some time for the team to kind of take a breath, but it's got to be too while it's still fairly fresh, because even if you're taking great notes and documenting everything as it's happening and as you're recovering, you want to get things while people have that, the pain is still fresh in their heart of, man, if only I could have saved 30 minutes on this task, it would have been a lot more for my personal life. Maybe I could have logged off sooner and gotten back to the kids or my activities. And all that kind of stuff. But I think you've been through a lot of this, Vince, hands-on or guiding customers through it. Can you share any of the sort of real stories or real incidents and make it real for all of us?
Yes, I will give two. I can do them pretty brief. I know we're running a little over on time, but I can make them brief. So in one situation, there was a company I was working for that we got a support request that a certain server was doing things that it didn't normally do. And the end user was like, I don't know what to do with this, Vince. Can you take a look? And lo and behold, there was a mailbot that had been put on that system, and it was sitting there just cranking away, sending whatever. Now, in that particular incident, the business did not get brought to its knees. There was no ransomware involved there, but it was a case where a system within that organization had been co-opted for another purpose. And that is something that you definitely want to make sure that you avoid. And as you change your systems and as you recover from even minor failures or gaps in your armor, you want to make sure that you not only close that door, but also put a deadbolt on it and make sure that the keys are kept in a safe place. We're talking about preparing for a ransomware attack or a recovery. The part of take and put a deadbolt on the door and secure the keys somewhere other than the door, that's really important. You can't just leave the key in the lock or leave the plan for the recovery in the environment, because guess what? The attackers are going to find it. Guess what? They're going to go make a copy of that recovery so they know exactly what you're going to do. You can't leave it in there. And then improve your systems. There was another company I worked for where they got burned. Ian, we've all gotten burned before. You do something, you're like, I don't want to do that again. So you just blanket block something. We're never going to use this. One particular organization I worked for, they decided that kernel updates on their Linux systems were just too cumbersome to worry about. So we're just never going to reboot our systems. Well,
no.
Ian says no. We'll leave it at that. That's just a bad idea. So, I understand getting burned. I understand failures happen. There's breaks in the armor, but you have to fix them. You have to do so in a smart way that sets you up for success in the future. And that's really the key. We said preparation is the key, but it's setting yourself up for success in the long run.
Yeah, I think I'll make this my closing comment then. One of the key elements there is not just the expertise, right, but maybe pursue dispassionate advice. If you've been through hell, like we said, like you've been through a tough event where you found you were exposed and things went down, the cost in terms of dollars, in terms of hours, etc. The knee-jerk reactions are not your friend. You need to respond quickly, but you need to respond dispassionately. You need to respond with data and evidence, not just quick like, oh yeah, I need to just stop ever doing anything. And that's another place I think where you've got to have people who have been through it before giving you good solid advice and holding your hand and documenting the right steps to take.
And that's where RPS can come into the RPS recovery point systems can come into the picture. If anything that we've talked about here is of interest to you, or you want to talk about it further, our contact information is here on the screen. Please reach out. I'm open to have conversations. I'd be willing to bet that Ian can talk tech with you anytime you want to. So don't hesitate to reach out. Is all I'm going to end with. That's all I got, folks. Hopefully the rest of the Actual Tech Media Megacast is of value to you, and don't be a stranger.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, great presentation, Vince and Ian. And I've got the poll question up here for everybody, just about what additional information you'd like from Recovery Point and Pure Storage. But Vince and Ian, are you guys ready for some questions?
I'm ready.
That's great.
All right. I think this first question comes from Chad, and it's a Recovery Point question. What mechanisms does Recovery Point provide to validate the integrity and recoverability of backup data to ensure it can be relied upon in case of an actual incident? So Vince, I guess I'll turn that one over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chad, for the question. I think what's really important to hammer home here is that at Recovery Point Systems, we are not just accepting data from customers. We're actually providing customers opportunities to iterate on that data. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we onboard a customer, we take in data. A short while later, we ask, hey, are you ready to validate this data? Are you ready to validate your solution? We run through an entire process where we spin up a small portion of the environment and we show you, hey, this is the data that you sent us. Is this what you're expecting? And if it is, great, we move forward. If it's not, we tweak a little bit. We move forward. We have a tool that we refer to as BPR, Business Process Resilience. And this allows us to automate and orchestrate the recovery of customer data. We also have clean rooms, isolated environments that customers can come on site at our facility in Maryland if they want to. If they want to do it all remote, that's fine too. We can work from our clean room and with the customer, but we allow for and enable that isolated recovery of data. It's not just, oh yeah, we can recover it, no big deal. And I'm sitting here gesturing off to my side as if you can see me, but it's not, we don't trivialize it. We have systems in place that allow us to make sure that anything that's important to the customer is part of the recovery process. I think, Ian, you wanted to chime in here on this question as well.
Yeah, this also reiterates the importance of where you're storing your recoverable copies, right? Some of the other questions that popped up during our talk were about, how many copies of data, and I responded with, it's less about how many. I mean, how many is important, but what's important is that those copies are immutable, really untamperable, right? That they can't be changed except but they can't be changed in place. They can, another copy could be made, another copy could be stored, but each copy is independently isolated from the next. That's really, really key, because it means that you're going to have obviously some point in time where corruption or encryption made its way in, but you've still got the other points in time that are independent and separate, and they're control isolated as well. And I think the other thing on top of, because I think I'm a big believer in the recovery exercises, the tabletop, sort of virtual can I recover exercises you're talking about. Those are huge. And also between those, are you storing things in a system that's going to tell you that uses some kind of intelligent algorithms that are going to be able to say, hey, this data changed a whole lot. This went from being highly dedupable data to now being completely encrypted or potentially encrypted all of a sudden. Is that sending you an alert and saying, hey, you should look at this? Because that's another way to be able to say, yeah, I've got something looking out for me. I've got people looking out for me, and I've also got quote unquote AI looking out for me.
I love that reference to tabletop exercises as well. I think those can't be emphasized enough. Hey, this next question here kind of relates to, you were talking about sort of the change rate of the data. There's a question here: how can an organization prepare to recover from a ransomware incident or other disaster with a high change rate within the environment? So I don't know which one of you guys might want to tackle that first, but I'll just kind of throw that out there.
I'll take a stab at it. Change rate of data. And typically, it's going to stress all the systems involved, right? You're talking about performance of environments, of compute resources, network connectivity that can handle lots of operations coming across the wire. You're also dealing with storage subsystems, right? The target storage for your backups, as well as production storage that can deal with change rates. I'm a big fan of going the green route. Use Flash. Can be fast, but can also be cost effective. Can be a lower power bill at the same time, which is always nice. But the thing about high change rate is you got to be storing data quickly, acknowledging the change rates, acknowledging the changes, and then moving quickly through those iterations of data. Right. So store it quickly. Make sure that you have a tiered approach to where you can recover from. Warm tier for recovery has taken off so much in the last probably in my experience, about 8 years. The warm recovery or even hot recovery tier was unheard of, 8 or 9 years ago. Flash was one of the major things that helped change that, the economics coming down. But, the business needs have also changed, right? Sometimes you just need to spend a little bit to have another tier that you can recover from more quickly. So if it's a high change rate, you've got a warmer tier to recover from, and then a colder tier to recover from. Then you're kind of protecting yourself more for having a more recent point in time to recover from.
Super.
And I will just add to that real quick, Scott, if you let me.
Please do.
It's simple phrase. The higher the change rate, the more often your data protection scheme needs to be acting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Next question comes from Paul, and we get this a lot. Where does cyber insurance fit into a post-incident plan? And how should that aspect be prepared in advance?
I'll take this one. I think I'm going to take it in a way that's probably not expected, but independent of the incident that one is facing, the more prepared you are, the more research you've done in advance, the better. So when it comes to cybersecurity insurance, go talk to your business and say, hey, how do we want to approach ransomware protection or cybersecurity protection? And if the response that your business gives you is, well, we'll just get some insurance for that. Okay, great. What is your insurance provider going to ask of you? If you look at the presentations that were given today, I saw several times where it was brought up that cybersecurity insurance is going to require that you do certain things in advance to make sure you're not just putting all the responsibility on them. In other words, you're going to need to train your users. You're going to need to put mitigations in place so that all the keys to the kingdom aren't in one system. They're not all in clear text in your production network. We talked about it in our presentation. having documentation that is separate from your production systems. So where does it fit into a post-incident plan? From the beginning. You need to be planning for it now. And if you really want the insurance kind of package for it, go look what they're going to require and then start implementing that stuff now before it becomes a problem.
Okay, great. Next question from Pam, who's wondering, what's the average response time for incident response? How quickly are things typically resolved using Recovery Point?
So we have teams that are on staff. Recovery Point has teams that are on staff 24/7. So if a customer puts in a request, a DR request, or all hands on deck, DR, we're down, however you want to phrase it, we have teams that are on staff 24/7. So I think our response time is pretty low. I'm not going to give you a number because I can't guarantee that. But quickly, if that's sufficient.
Okay.
I think in addition to quickly, this also feeds into the your planning, right? Like, how quickly do you need your partner in disaster recovery to be able to respond, and have you had that conversation up front in the design phase of your DR and your backup strategies, right? Because if you haven't set that up front, if you hadn't said, hey, I need a response in X number of seconds, hours, minutes, days, weeks, then you can't have designed the infrastructure and the people, procedures around them to be able to get to that point.
Okay. All right. Time for just a couple more questions. This is kind of a fun one. What's the ultimate air gap solution?
Scott, I don't think we have time for pie in the sky, sir.
Fair
Well,
enough.
I think the ultimate would be, can you make a copy, unplug it from everything, maybe even unplug it from a power source, put it inside a lead-lined vault. But the problem there is that's only as good as it is recent, right? The longer it sits, the harder it gets. So air gap is such a the term air gap now is kind of like cloud was 10 years ago. What does it really mean? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It's about isolating controls. It's about isolating access, and you've got to open or let down the drawbridge at least every so often to let new data in. So the best air gap is the one that has the drawbridge that goes up and down as quickly as possible and as infrequently as you can tolerate.
That's a realistic answer and a great one. Appreciate that. So we are running out of time, but if somebody wants to get started with especially the joint solution here, or find out more, what do you recommend?
Give us a call. Shoot us an email.
Yep, our contact information is in our presentation, and I'm sure a copy of it can be given again if someone wants it. But my answer is reach out. We're human. Reach out. We'll talk to you.
All right, tremendous.
Absolutely.
Well, Ian and Vince, thank you so much for being here and bringing us up to speed on this joint solution. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
All right. And now it is time for our next prize drawing. And the winner of the $300 Amazon gift card is Amir Toliat from Texas. And we also have a grand prize drawing to give away here. And I'm just checking on that. Hang on one sec. Yep. So our next M2 MacBook Air actually goes to somebody who just asked a question in this last segment, Paul Filio from California. So congratulations to Amir on the gift card and Paul on the M2 MacBook Air. We will be in touch about claiming your prizes. All right, and now it's time for our next presentation in the Ransomware Megacast. And believe it or not, it is our last presentation today. So this session comes from Rapid7, and presenting for Rapid7 is Michaela Wyman, Product Marketing Manager. So Michaela, welcome. Take it away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Michaela Wyman. I'm a product marketing manager at Rapid7, and today we're going to talk through ransomware and some tips to stop initial access, some preparation tips, and then remediation and mitigation recommendations. So, a little bit about Rapid7. Rapid7 is a leader in the security operations space. We have a vast research and open source community, pretty large global footprint with a presence in over 144 countries. We have 21 offices worldwide. We're an innovation leader with our global ecosystem of over 300 platform integrations, and as of now, around 1,100 customers. So let's talk through the meat of today. I know we only have a little bit of time. So I want to talk through some emerging trends in ransomware that we're seeing. One is double extortion. We're seeing that backups are, necessary, but not sufficient. We'll talk through that a little bit later. Access brokers, the ones who encrypt you might not be the ones that hack you. Ransomware as a service. So, threat actors prefer recurring revenue. So we'll talk about being kind of hit twice, and then lateral movement and some of the best practices what we're seeing. So tips for preventing initial access. A couple things here. One, multi-factor authentication. We see it time and time again. The overwhelming majority of our customers who are hit by ransomware or malware don't have two-factor authentication in place. It's no longer a nice to have, it is necessary. So a couple different types. There's security key, there's on-device prompt, and then it's really important to make sure that you're educating your users. So how to use it, why it's important, why it needs to be set up correctly, and why it's required by systems. Vulnerability management. So there's an increased urgency in critical vulnerabilities. We've seen an increasing amount of vulnerabilities hitting systems over the past 6 months. They're being exploited en masse, and the patching needs to happen very, very quickly. 24 to 48 hours is just not enough time. And then appliances ship with default credentials. So change those before you put an appliance on the internet. And then patching after you've been exploited does not remove the exploit. So we'll kind of talk through that in a little bit as well. Code execution tips. So Office 365, important to disable the legacy authentication, reviewing user apps, disabling, forwarding to external domains, configuring anti-spam and outbound spam policies, enabling unified audit log and mailbox auditing. And then default file associations, change some of these for the typical attack types. Make sure you're pointing file extensions away from script interpreters, and then utilize the group policy to set default file associations across the environment. A couple of endpoint hardening tips here. So for attack surface reduction, some of the rules that you can utilize to prevent malware, there's a couple of samples here, but really reducing your attack surface helps protect your environment from malicious behavior by limiting the ways that threat actors can perform attacks. It's really important to make sure that the available attack vectors are as small as possible. Important to note here that some behavior rules can be legitimate. However, they are most likely targeted by threat actors, so it's important to limit those. A couple of additional prevention tips here. So ensuring account permissions are managed appropriately. So making sure that you have that granular control for users, especially for admin rights on endpoints. restricting things like write permissions, admin users and accounts, trying to grant the lowest level of permissions available that still allows your employees to do their jobs, but kind of creating those exceptions, and then removing the ability for those users to install and run any softwares that haven't been approved by your IT teams. Blocking indicators of ransomware seems straightforward, but any indicators of malicious executables, being able to block those will prevent that ransomware from executing and communicating with command and control servers. Spear phishing mitigation. So utilizing the technology to kind of inspect links and attachments at the mail server. Then drive-by attacks. So, proxy can be deployed to inspect web browsing activity for specific ransomware threats. And then just in general, monitoring for process-related triggers. So develop policies to disable macro scripts unless they're approved by your security team. This kind of helps prevent exploits that are delivered by some common document types. And then just a note that it should be standard to disable things like macros from running on an email attachment. Preparing for ransomware, we're going to talk through some incident response stuff. So making sure that you have a comprehensive incident response plan is so necessary. You can't expect your teams to respond well to a ransomware threat or to indicators of ransomware if you don't have a plan in place. So do you have an incident response playbook? This should kind of be first and foremost of knowing what to do if something like this happens and who's responsible for these things. IR plans and run books can happen through either comprehensive internal processes or you can create these with the help of a vendor. But really making sure that you have playbooks in place so that if these things happen, your business continuity is not threatened, or offline time can be brought down to as small amount of time as possible. Identification, so making sure that you have the technology and the systems in place to identify that attack is happening before ransomware is executed. Ransomware is one of those things where if it executes, it's too late. So making sure that you have the proper things in place to identify pre-execution. And then containment, how are you planning to make sure that you're able to take systems offline or quarantine assets that may be affected so that it doesn't move laterally and infect entire systems. Eradication. So if this happens, do you have a plan in place to do this on your own internally? Do you have a partner, maybe a DFIR retainer or consultants that you have on standby ready to help you in the event of an attack? Making sure that you have recovery measures in place. The goal is to, again, maintain business continuity. You don't want to lose customer trust. You don't want to have your systems be offline. You don't want an impact to revenue by not being able to complete daily tasks and keep your business running. So making sure that you have proper measures in place to make sure that if something happens, you have ways to get back online and get your employees and your systems working as soon as possible. And then finally, making sure that you have a post-mortem review process in place. So if something happens, what worked well within your processes, what didn't, what needs to be revisited, what needs to be rebuilt, and how can you kind of utilize the lessons learned in this event to make sure that whatever happens in the future is handled better and you're more and more effective at making sure that your response to ransomware is effective and efficient. A big thing that we're going to talk about is limiting the impact of an attack. So if something does happen, making sure that it doesn't render your business, completely offline or make you, kind of immobile. So biggest thing here is kind of removing any infected systems. So limit the replication of any execution of ransomware in adjacent assets. This can be like physically removing devices from being online. This could be a script. This could be an automation, but just making sure that you have processes in place, either through technology or through manual process, to make sure that you can take those systems offline. Restoring data. This is kind of one of those things that we were talking about in the beginning, one of those trends. Backup plans kind of aren't enough. It's really important to make sure that you have backups of your backups. So regular backups should be happening, and they should be automated in an ideal world, but those backups should not be accessible by those main systems. So completely removing backups of those really important files and any really important business critical data, storing those either in the cloud or on a server that's not accessible from those main systems is highly suggested. Also, in issuing new assets, if something needs to be taken offline or wiped or quarantined, it's important to make sure that your employees can get back online and do their jobs. So making sure that you have an audit of your assets, making sure that you have a backlog and a supply of assets that can be stood up and utilized. One of those worst case scenarios is something happens and you go into your supply closet and realize that you have no backup of assets. You have no additional assets that you can utilize to get people online, and then you're scrambling. This is highly suggested as well. And then duplicate attacks. We utilize this stat a lot, but I think the actual number is about 67% of companies that are breached are likely to be breached again within 12 months. And it's important to be really surgically effective in remediation and not just taking those systems offline, but making sure that you are completely cutting off attack vectors at the source so that you're not a victim to a breach again, either in the same way or, through the same attack vectors. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we get into remediation and mitigation recommendations. So some of the Rapid7, approved recommendation and remediation, some of the Rapid7 recommended remediation steps. We'll go through each one of these, but making sure that you're able to rebuild systems from a known good baseline to stop undetected threats. Making sure that your systems are up to date with some kind of anti-malware solution. So, making sure that you're able to remove malware and related artifacts. Blocking, so making sure that malicious domains and IP addresses and senders are blocked. Anything that you're seeing that's new, you're adding to this list. So making sure that this is not static, it's updated regularly. Terminating malicious processes on those identified compromised endpoints. Quarantining affected endpoints from the network, pretty straightforward. And then locking those compromised accounts until credentials can be rotated. Changing affected passwords as soon as possible to prevent an attacker from leveraging credentials to access, additional information. And then making sure that you're able to determine whether other users have received communications in the same way, or understand if this attack type has happened in any other way or in a similar way with any other user or asset. So making sure that you can remove any of these malicious communications or warn your employees of these communication types, and then again going back and blocking that sender or that identified malicious domain or IP. Moving on to mitigation recommendations. First and foremost, removing that user's domain account from the local admin group. This kind of helps stop some lateral movement. Conducting some employee phishing awareness training, or just making sure that they understand what to look for, what might be malicious, and how to report that to your security teams so that you can make sure you're able to add those malicious senders as they're happening and inform your teams of new attack types. Disabling the execution of macros in Microsoft Office, as we mentioned previously. And then ensuring unique passwords for local administrator accounts. Try not to utilize, broad or reused passwords. Also important to implement application whitelisting for critical systems. And then creating separate user accounts for privileged and non-privileged domain activities. It's really important to segment these. It's logistically more difficult, but in the long run, so much more secure. Also reviewing URL and firewall outbound access policies, and then blocking those high-risk categories. Things that we've all identified, dangerous content, explicit content, things like that. And then preventing activation of OLE packages in Microsoft Word to prevent users from launching malicious packages. So we've gone over recommended remediation and mitigation steps. Finally, just want to talk through some ransomware trends, going back to the trend that we started with at the top, but kind of adding that mitigation touch to it. So overall, really important to protect sensitive data, whether that's through regular backups and that added protection of making sure that there's separate backups that aren't accessible through, any system that could be affected. Also making sure that you're backing up data, both need to happen. Traditional ransomware still does a lot, makes up a lot of incidents, and both need to happen. With the increasing trend of ransomware as a service, the number of groups that are targeting companies is growing. So make sure you know who some of these people are. Don't get complacent. Access brokers establish a way in, and then they sell that access. So this kind of goes back to that stat about 70% of businesses being targeted twice. Make sure that your remediation and mitigation are super, super effective. Again, like going back to basics, attackers live off the land for a lot of lateral movement. So make sure that the privileges of accounts are up to par. And then make sure that you're super prepared, whether that's those incident response playbooks and runbooks that we talked about earlier, but then also making sure that you're utilizing services like tabletops, purple team exercises, pen tests, to make sure that your teams are really ready and able to respond. And then, once you have done those activities, make sure you're utilizing them to inform how to make your strategy stronger in the future. So tabletop exercise, make sure that you have a playbook and a runbook that's effective. Purple team exercises to make sure that you're your systems in place are effective, and then utilizing a pen test to make sure if this actually happens, what's happening on your team, and then making sure you're going back and saying, okay, this is what we did well, this is what we didn't do well, here's where we need to focus, and repeating that exercise. All of these things will make sure that your organization stays ready to decrease the effects of ransomware, but increase your ability to respond and prevent. That's it for today. I know that was really quick and we moved through a lot of information. A ton of this is covered in our ransomware playbook that is available to everybody here. And if there are any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for the time.
Okay, well, thanks to Michaela Wyman for a great presentation there, and thanks so much for educating us on Rapid7. And as we do at the end of every session, we have a poll question for you. We appreciate your feedback on additional resources that you'd like to see from Rapid7. And it looks like we did have a lot of questions that we can't get to right here, but Michaela and the Rapid7 team will do their best to respond to all those questions. And I'd also like to remind you all about the handouts. We do have that link from Rapid7 for that ransomware playbook that Michaela just mentioned. So be sure to check that out if you'd like to get a copy of it. This is also a final reminder about all the handouts for all of our presenters today. We're about to wrap up the event, so if there are any resources that you'd like to have, this is your last chance to grab them. Okay, well, thank you to everybody who's responded to the poll already. We appreciate your feedback, and we'll just leave that up here while we do our final prize drawing. So let's go ahead to that prize drawing. And so we have one more $300 Amazon gift card to give away, and this one goes to Johnny Allen from Mississippi. And we have one more M2 MacBook Air to give away, and this one goes to Melissa Tompkins from Texas. So congratulations to Johnny Allen and Melissa Tompkins, and to all of our winners today. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes, and of course, every session also included a $50 best question prize. Those get selected after the end of the event. So if you didn't win so far, you still have an opportunity to win if you put a question in any one of the sessions throughout the day. All right. Well, if you were watching the event today and thinking this type of event would be the ideal platform to tell folks about your solution, we'd love to hear from you to determine which of our hundreds of events each year would be a good fit for you. So contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such great presentations and demos and Q&A insights. I also want to thank all of our participants for making this event possible. Those presenters were TierPoint, Zerto, Veeam, Rubrik, ID Agent, KnowBe4, Metallic, Recovery Point, Pure Storage, and Rapid7. It's been a great day full of great presentations around ransomware. And last but not least, thanks to everyone in the audience for being here for this megacast, and especially to all of you who asked questions and provided feedback in polls and on our 2024 calendar question. We do really appreciate it. That's going to bring it to a close for this ransomware megacast. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.